Welcome, Berk, and a brand new guest, Mr. Titus. Welcome to a Three Guys Talk About in this new era, this new year, 2025. And it's a new era. It's a new era for Nintendo, for video games, and we're going to talk about a game that came out in 2017 that everyone has already talked about to death. How are you two doing? How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing well. You know, I'm just really happy we actually got the time to come back together, especially after all these years, to do, especially something that, like, I adore this game, but I know it's not going to be for reasons people like, that I'm ready to get into it.
Interesting.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to discuss Breath of the Wild.
Absolutely. And for people watching, because those people might not know, Titus has been a longtime friend of me and Berk, and in fact, we have actually kind of talked about games like this before with him. So I decided, why not a better game to start with than Breath of the Wild? Because I know he has some hot takes about it, and I thought, hey, of all the people to talk about this game with, it should probably be Titus.
Am I the resident Nintendo nerd?
You kind of are.
Yeah.
You're more fanboyish than I am.
No, that's completely fair. That's completely fair.
I would disagree on the fanboyishness. I would say you're probably one of the most cynical Nintendo fans I've ever interacted with, Titus.
Hold. Fanboys can be cynical, though. Like, a fanboy, a diehard, would that be a better term?
I guess. I don't know how you would say, like, because the equivalent would be me saying I'm like an Xbox fanboy or a Halo fanboy. Like, you can already tell that's not the right label. It's like, I criticize those games more than
I would call
anybody.
you a diehard Halo, though. Maybe.
It's the series, those are like the systems in the series that I grew up with. I grew up with Xbox, I grew up with like PC gaming, companies like Valve, and I would say, Titus, your equivalent would definitely be way more Nintendo.
Definitely, yeah. My first game console was actually a Dreamcast and then a PS2, but pretty much other than that, I had a Game Boy Advance. It was like my very first game console adjacent type thing. Well, it's a handheld, but you know. And you know, I was more attached to that than the PS2 or the Dreamcast. And then I got a Wii when I was like 10 or something, and it's been Nintendo since then. I like other stuff too. Like I have a PlayStation 5 and all that, but
the Wii is one hell of a time.
The Wii was such a magical time. Such a magical and jank time.
I guess.
It's a little harder getting back into the Wii when you have more modern conveniences. Like even like playing on the Switch for like those Switch Go games, like the Gunslinger one. We're like, wow, this is so much more intuitive and way less jank than Wii Sports.
Yeah,
but it was fresh technology, so it was all exciting and fun. Like, because I grew up on GameCube. That was my console, and Game Boy Advance rocked. You got to play Super Nintendo games on a handhold. It was crazy. So I'm with you on that one, Titus. Like, I've been a Nintendo guy most of my life. It's just, now there's just so much other stuff to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would consider myself a big fan of, like, a lot of Nintendo franchises, and, like, I have a respect for the history, you know, a lot of the stuff made by Nintendo. I'm just not, you know, blindly loyal to them. Like, I'm not, you know, that one clip from the Apple presentation where the guy's like, make fans into like worshipers or whatever. Like, he's talking about it like it's a religion or something like that.
It's like turn
you know?
fans into ambassadors, or like
that.
Turn consumers into fanatics.
Yeah, I'm not that. Like, I like and respect a lot about Nintendo, but I'm not like, you know, obsessive over it. You know, like they're just as flawed as everyone else, just in different ways.
Leave the multi-billion corporation alone.
Yeah.
I mean, Titus, you don't have to sidestep around it. You can just say Pokemon.
Oh, that's not Nintendo. That's Game Freak. We'll save that for a Pokemon conversation. That's a whole other can of worms, brother.
I like my games that look like Nintendo Hire This Man tech demos.
I know it's different. and all like the the scope of the game and all I'm saying is Bandai Namco came in and made new Pokemon Snap and made something that looked better than anything Game Freak has ever made. That's all I'm saying.
I've said it many times. Game Freak needs to just go back to pixel art. That's all they have to do. Just let them go back. But no, we're not here to talk about Pokemon. We are here to talk about what I would say is a much better game. We are, of course, talking about Breath of the Wild. And so I kind of want to start with you two, with both how you guys either got into Zelda or got into this game in particular.
I wasn't actually like the most adventure-oriented kid growing up. My neighbors, this is back when you went over to your friend's house to play different consoles and that kind of shit, had a copy of Majora's Mask. And I wasn't really good at horror, and it was when you were playing the Deku Scrub going through the poison swamp, and I went, wow, that looks scary. I don't want to deal with that. And then 3 years later, I played Ocarina of Time, and I fucking loved it. But that's because that was when it was coming out. Twilight Princess is still probably my favorite game, but I understand that's 100% nostalgia goggles.
That's a 100%. That's a weird game to have as your favorite.
I respect it.
But it's right at that era where I hit the target audience of they were going for that grungier look at the time.
No,
and
I
was still Weenie Hut Jr. baby trying to be edgy. So it was that perfect middle spot, right? And then went to university, didn't have a lot of time for games. So it was really nice getting out of university, like a solid full-time job, to get home and be like, oh, the Nintendo Switch, this is pretty good. What is this game? So I got into it, I think, about 4 months after it came out. And then I just did nothing but play that game until I was done with it. And I had a great time.
Well, let's see. My history with Zelda as a franchise overall. I suppose it started when I was a kid, when I had a Wii growing up. One of the first games that my parents bought for me was The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Similar to Berk. Yeah, I never got very far in it. I was a stupid kid. I didn't really get it. I never got past the opening part of the game where you're in the starting village. I'm forgetting the name of the village right now because I want to say it's Kakariko Village, but I know it's not. But yeah, I would play with my dad, and neither of us knew what we were doing. We never got very far. And I just thought, man, this weird game about this guy from that Smash Bros game I don't like it. I want to play Pokemon instead. But I ended up later on, I played a different Zelda game. So around when the 3DS came out, I bought the Ocarina of Time 3D release on the 3DS because I'd never played Ocarina of Time. I never had an N64 growing up. So I played my very first Zelda game was the remake of Ocarina of Time. And I was like, wow, this is a great game. I see why people talk so fondly about Zelda. And then I kind of just do this thing I do with most game franchises that I get attached to, where I play one game and then I will systematically go through every game in the franchise and try to track them all down and play them. So from there I played other games. I replayed Twilight Princess properly this time, and then I played Skyward Sword, and I played a bunch of the other Zelda games. To date, I have played almost every single Zelda game and beaten almost every Zelda games. The only ones I have not beaten are Zelda 2.
That one's hard.
Yeah, I've never beaten Minish Cap.
Ooh.
One of the Four Swords games, I can't remember which one. I got the Anniversary Collection one on my 3DS ages ago, and I played that one. It's the one that isn't that, because I know there's 2 Four Swords games. It's the other one. Yeah, other than those ones, the only other Zelda game I never played, of the mainline stuff anyways, was the newest one. The one where you play as Zelda herself. Haven't touched that. And then I haven't played, the Tingle side games, or Link's Crossbow Training, or the Cadence of Hyrule crossover, or Triforce Heroes, which is kind of a spin-off. Warriors. Hyrule Warriors I actually have played. I played and completed both. And
okay. Wait, you completed Hyrule Warriors?
Well, not I'm not the completionist. Well, before he, before he got canceled. I'm not the completion. I didn't 100% them. I'm not insane. But I did complete the main storyline and stuff like that. And I don't know if this is a hot take. The Breath of the Wild Hyrule Warriors game is a better Breath of the Wild game than both of the two mainline Breath of the Wild games.
Wow,
Ooh, we're getting right
some,
into it.
Those are some fighting words. So, my experience with Zelda is a little different from your guys' experience. I never played Zelda. I literally never did. I shouldn't say that. On the Nintendo DS, I had, I believe it was Phantom Hourglass, and I barely played. I couldn't get through like the first dungeon, and I just gave up. Kid Andy did not care about Zelda. All he cared about was Metroid Prime Hunters and going to school and starting Metroid Prime Hunter matches with all the other kids with their DSs. That's what Andy was up to back in the 2000s. And that's kind of like the extent of my experience with Nintendo in general. People who've watched my channel, they may or may not have seen the Metroid Prime Hunters video. That's the only other Nintendo game I've ever covered for a reason. And yeah, my experience with Nintendo was I had a DS, and then our family had a Wii, but I barely played it. And that was it. Then I immediately kind of moved on with that, played Xbox, got a PC, and it would have been around 2020 when a certain cough was going around that for some reason I think I decided, hey, I want to get a Switch, but I couldn't because I don't know if you guys remember the quarantine. Switches were, you just straight up could not buy them. They were all sold out everywhere. Everywhere I looked, they were sold out. And I want to say they were sold out for like a year. There was like it took me a year. But I tried looking for a Switch right when the coof happened, and it literally I was not able to buy a Switch until like January of 2021, like a year later. Leading up to me finally giving in and buying a Switch. Like, I'd heard a little bit of Breath of the Wild. I'd heard it was this big open world game. It was the best thing since sliced bread. Never really looked into it. I never really I don't know. I shouldn't say I was like really cynical to Nintendo. There was definitely a period of time where I just kind of looked at that. I'm like, okay, whatever you guys, whatever Nintendo. This would have been like going back to Pokemon, like Sword and Shield, Titus. This would have been like around Labo. This was me when I was looking at the Switch, thinking to myself, why would I have a computer. I have all the games I want to play. I really don't need to jump onto that system. I really don't.
But you can't play Pikmin on your computer legally.
I disagree. I can play a lot of Nintendo stuff on my computer, which is probably what kept me from buying a Switch for a while. But yeah, around 2021, I finally got a Switch. I barely had any games for it, and for a while I barely touched it too. And at some point, I think I just kind of caved in and bought Breath of the Wild. It initially did suck me in. I enjoyed parts of it. There were parts of it that I did not like, and then I kind of dropped it. I probably played it for maybe over the course of a year, very slowly, casually, and then I kind of gave up on it. And then probably a couple of years went by, and that's when Tears of the Kingdom came out, and a friend of mine straight up gifted me Tears of the Kingdom for my birthday, and I'm like, okay, well, now I have to play it. I felt obligated to play it. I'm glad I did, because I actually did enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would. That in turn kind of got me back into Breath of the Wild. And then I also have another friend who's really into Breath of the Wild, and she kind of encouraged me to get back into it as well. So I did, and I realized oh, I actually like this game. There's a lot of objective parts of this game that are really good, that are well made, that are it's a very quality open world game. That's another part I want to kind of branch off into. There are so many fucking open world games. Can we acknowledge that? Can we acknowledge that there are almost too many? We are in the era of open world games.
Too many of them, if you ask me.
It's the fucking buzzword that makes me immediately get nervous in an announcement of, we're making a new exciting open world. I'm like, please no.
Open world to me is the buzzword equivalent for single player games that I get when I'm playing a multiplayer game and you hear live service model. That it's the same thing. Like, oh no, the shiver down the spine.
But open world games, there's too many. There's way too many.
Way too fucking many. Holy shit.
Everyone who's watched my Halo Infinite review knows I kind of hate a repeated type of open world, and that is That is wherein I kind of like Breath of the Wild, is the fact that it broke away from those trends. And I'm good for lack of a better word, I'm going to call them the Far Cry open world games.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone likes to point to GTA as like the open world defining game. And while it is, there's not a lot of rip-offs of GTA. Like, because think about it. You maybe have, what, like Driver, and then maybe Saints Row?
There's also Mercenaries.
Berk, they haven't made Mercenaries since, like, the Bush administration.
Okay.
But that's what I'm saying.
Would you count Yakuza? Would you count Yakuza as a GTA type game?
No, I wouldn't.
No,
I really
it's
wouldn't.
not.
It's not. What a lot of open world games are is Far Cry. That's what a lot of games rip off, because GTA, it's a giant open world, and there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of story, there's a lot of production value, and a bunch of companies said, hey, these open world games sell a lot. Oh, but it's really expensive to make a Grand Theft Auto. Oh, wait, if we just copy Far Cry, that's a little cheaper, and maybe we'll get some return on our investment. The Far Cry formula and I'll sum up the Far Cry formula right now, because we're really going to get into it. And it really was Far Cry 3. When I talk about the Far Cry formula, think of Far Cry 3. A game which a lot of people like, and I don't think anybody has played it since 2012. I think everyone who angrily defends Far Cry 3, I really don't think they have revisited that game in 10 years.
So what's The Last of Us?
Titus, come on. No, Titus,
good.
we're talking about video games, not TV shows.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
With Far Cry 3, it is a fake. I'm going to call them fake open world games. They are so restrictive in their design. They peddle this idea of, oh, you can do anything. Far Cry's crazy. It's Skyrim with guns. But the thing with Far Cry, it is not like, it's not a free form game. You are constantly stuck with story mode. You're constantly stuck with these story objectives that will continue to like block your progress through the game. And the open world aspect, all it really is, it's this exact same stuff copied and pasted over and over. You have outposts, you have side quests, and you know the exact type of quest that I'm talking about. You go interact with an NPC, you're frozen for a minute as you listen to dialogue, and then you drive out to a spot and you shoot some guys, and then you drive back and you get your reward. And the outpost system gets really annoying. That's, you find enemy outposts and you liberate enemy outposts. You have to kill all enemies in the outpost and you unlock it, and then that's it. That's all Far Cry really is, with these annoying bits of story here and there. And it's a very easy formula to copy and paste, because I just said it. You will recognize every open world game being within this formula, trying to rip off the Far Cry formula. Ironically, that's what Halo Infinite really was. Halo Infinite kind of advertised itself as like, oh look, we're almost Breath of the Wild. There was a period of time where a lot of games tried to pretend they were Breath of the Wild. We'll get into that later.
Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Halo Infinite did not learn anything from Breath of the Wild. The game it took a lot of stuff from was Far Cry 3. And yeah, I really disliked this open world trend. I really disliked this I don't know, just fake open worldness. This like, oh, you can do anything, and you realize, oh, you really can't do it. You can't do anything because you're doing the same stuff over and over, and it's boring. Have you ever played Rage 2? It's it's bad. And so that's where Breath of the Wild shocked me. It was all of a sudden, it's open. I can go anywhere. I can do anything. Let's start with the opening of Breath of the Wild. The plateau. An amazing opener. You can go anywhere.
Zelda's been British this whole time. No one told me.
Our light that must shine upon Hyrule once again.
The British accent. It's grown on me. But she is not British, the voice actress.
No, it's... I want to say, no disrespect to Zelda, Breath of the Wild Zelda's voice actress. She does a fine job. She's one of the better voice actresses in the Breath of the Wild games. No hate against her. She did a good job. It's just like, I wasn't expecting Zelda to be British. I don't know. I just wasn't expecting that. I would have expected her to have no discernible accent, really.
I guess it makes sense. Like royal family, I guess. Very royal blood.
Titus out here is doing the Hatsune Miku. Excuse me, are you British?
Yeah.
No. So does that mean Link probably has a British accent?
I think
I
that's
don't
why he chooses
think
not
so.
to talk.
Link is common born, at least in the Breath of the Wild. Well, in actually most Zelda games, I think he's
True.
common born, so he would speak like any other normal Hyrulean. So he'd probably speak with whatever accent characters like Purah or Robbie would have. In Tears of the Kingdom, Purah talks a lot, so he'd probably just have a standard American accent if he had any voice. Although he does talk canonically,
He does.
we just don't hear him. There's that diary entry, you know.
Yeah, he's just busy, which makes sense. It's like we've all had those moments where you make a huge mistake or something intense is happening. It's like I don't want to talk. I'm focusing right now. It's
If
like
you
a
had the
little
weight
bit
of
like Samus.
if you had the weight of the world on your shoulders, knowing you were the reincarnation of a legendary hero, like meant to stop the apocalypse, and you were also 24/7 surrounded by baddies, I would not speak either. I wouldn't want to fumble the bag. Like I would want to fumble the bag.
And it's a good immersion piece too. Link is silent, so you can put yourself into their perspective a little easier. That's why silent protagonists. I always enjoy a silent protag. I play FPS games. You know, your silent protags are kind of the default, and it's good. It's nice to have someone who, and especially knowing that they can talk, they're just focused. It's like, okay, it's game time. They're not,
You don't
they're
like
not
Rick
bothering.
and Morty dialogue when you're playing your
That
game?
just happened. Oh my god! I just moved that with my frickin' mind.
Wow, you really shot that guy. It's kind of messed up, man.
I like how they kept that. And the opener to Breath of the Wild, especially as someone who had never played Zelda, and I didn't even really know what I was getting into. I think when I went into Breath of the Wild, I was thinking, like, is this just going to be a normal open world game? And it wasn't. It was, okay, I can pick up tree branches. There's this old guy here. One of the first things that stood out to me is, like, cooking food. Like, I remember I threw, like, some apples on the ground next to a fire and saw that they got cooked. And I was like, what the heck? Like, it's like Arx Fatalis. It's like, Jesus, this is cool. I haven't seen this in forever.
I love cooking, Mama.
And then you get to a cooking pot. God, I've spent so many hours in Breath of the Wild just cooking. I literally will just like collect a bunch of food and just spend a few minutes just making as many meals as I can. But yeah, that plateau, that's a good opener to the game. I like it. It teaches you everything.
It's a really good tutorial. Nintendo does one thing
Yeah.
really well. I've noticed when it's their mainline products, they always have a really good tutorial section. They really want to make sure you understand what the fuck you're getting into before you just go head first, which is even funnier because did either of you play the master version?
I did
the
not.
hard
No,
mode?
no.
So they put a fucking silver Lionel in the open field of that plateau. So you're like,
Naruhodo.
okay, I'm gonna have all right. Why are there silver enemies in the tutorial section? Why is there a Lionel?
Get good,
I'll
man.
never forget the fear.
I was gonna say like, God, like there's so many bad tutorial levels.
Cuphead. The Cuphead.
No, Cuphead was a great tutorial level. It showed us.
No, I know.
Unless
I'm
you're
just thinking
unless you're
of,
Dean Takahashi. you
Yeah,
know,
I'm thinking of the Cuphead video.
I am
the
too,
one
and I'm
of
saying
him, yeah.
it's a great tutorial. It shows you who's a gaming journalist and who isn't.
There's so many just bad tutorial levels. It's, here's this big game that you want to get into. Oh, but you're stuck beating the tutorial, and it's long and slow, and it's full of cutscenes. It's full of moments where your character is locked in place as you interact with another character. And with Nintendo, what I like is the plateau. The entire thing is like a mini version of what you're going to be playing the entire game. Here is a little open world that you can complete before you go to the big open world. And I like that. It's a fun change of pace. And that whole area, too, is just fun to explore. You go up north, and you immediately get hit with the cold. You kind of learn things like, if you set fire to stuff, you can
Keep yourself warm.
keep yourself warm. So you kind of start learning the physics of the game. You also learn, like, cooking. Like, these... I think you find, like, those peppers. And you're like, I can stave off the cold for a little while. You start getting into your shrines, which we can get into in a little bit. But the big one is you really start understanding the gameplay. You start understanding how combat works. You understand that this is not an RPG. You don't have skills. You're not like min-maxing. You are scavenging what you can find, and that's all you're able to do. And all you have to do, you have to work within those limits. You have to work within that.
Did you think of the Legend of Zelda series as an RPG?
There are some people who are adamant that it is an RPG. I'm of the opinion that it is not an RPG. I'm of the opinion that Zelda is more in line with a puzzle game than it is with, say, like an RPG, like an Ultima or what have you.
Right.
Zelda has more in common with, say, King's Quest than it does with, like, you know, like an Elder Scrolls or...
I will tell you what people thought Legend of Zelda was an RPG game, and it's people that only ever played Legend of Zelda 2.
True,
Because
yeah,
you go out, you leave town, you fight enemies and variety of things in random encounter battles, and you get AXP for these fights. Then you go to a dungeon, you get level up, you go back to town, next thing. That's an RPG. You know, with a little bit more, like, responsive combat time. But every other one is, kind of... Even original Zelda, or the OG one, right? If you pulled up the fucking do-do-do-do, it's kind of fairly open world. It's just a top-down. You go explore different corners of the map. There's areas you can't get to with the gear initially, and then eventually you have the gear to get over there.
Yeah, like, I guess if you want to be pedantic, sure, Zelda games have RPG elements, but, like...
They're
they're
puzzle
action-adventure games with puzzle... side parts.
I always thought it was funny. It's like, it's King's Quest. That's what Zelda always... That's the lineage that I always see from Zelda that not a lot of people point out.
Actually, you can aim your reticle when you shoot a bow and arrow, so it's an FPS.
Oh god, that was to this day that still remains my filter in Breath of the Wild is the motion control aiming.
Really? I loved that shit.
Can't you turn it off?
You can. It's helpful in some parts, but annoying in others. Specifically puzzles, which we'll get into.
I was a big Splatoon player at the time, so I was, and I mean like an S-ranked player at the time. Like that's back when that was all I did. So the motion control was so fucking nice. Of like, watch me do this whip shot.
But Zelda's not an RPG. It is an adventure game, and that's what I like. It is, you do not level up. There's no experience. There's no, you unlocked level 13. You now have to select this skill from a skill tree that gives you 2% fire damage. There's none of that, and I like it.
You get base stats up for your Pokemon.
Yeah, I guess the closest RPG element is that you can choose whether to allocate stat growth into either more hearts or more stamina, but like, I don't know, that's a bit of a reach to call that an RPG.
Those will max out. It's not like an RPG where you have to choose your build. And then you get introduced to the combat, and specifically you have your first encounter with enemies where you realize that there's weapon degradation.
Bro.
Yeah, I think it could be fixed if it was like twice the amount of durability, or maybe even like 3 or 4 times the amount of durability. I don't hate the idea of weapon degradation.
It's not bad when you get like the rusty swords when you start, you know, like when you first like pilfer the wooden swords from the goblins or whatever the fuck they're called, or you find like the rusty shields and bows from like previous travelers. That's fine that they break.
Yeah.
But when you get a finely master crafted weapon and you're like, oh, this was made in a forge recently, right? And then you like touch a Lionel 3 times and it shatters, you're like, How
did they ever survive previous calamities if their forgery skills are this pathetic?
They had to do the Japanese method where they had the second and third sword on their belt.
You're not wrong. Okay, so here, to me, this is the thing, right? Like, kind of like what Berk was saying, the idea of collecting like inoptimal or weaker items and progressing over time is fine. Like, that's cool. Like, it's cool you can pick up a rusted sword and then use it, and you can pick up like a wooden ladle and use it like a weapon as an improvisation. You know, you're relying on what you can find. It's an apocalyptic world, you know.
I like how you can just chuck a weapon. Like that
that's the best part.
That makes sense of like, oh yeah, you chuck a sword at a dude, that sword's gonna break, but that's like last line of defense.
It's literally throwing the gun when you're out of bullet mentality.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest issue is that there are some weapons and equipment that just shouldn't be breakable. Like, behold, the Master Sword the blade of evil's bane. It can vanquish demons, empowered by the gods of this world, embodied with the spirit alive inside the sword. Like it's like this super powerful holy artifact that's treated like this grandiose thing. It breaks after 30 swings.
Imagine in the Knights of the Round Table, old school King Arthur. Hold on, guys, I swung my sword 30 times. Can we come back to the next battle for this holy crusade?
Yeah, hang on, I gotta let Excalibur charge. I gotta use the whetstone a little bit. Hang on one second.
Lightsaber runs on like AA batteries for Jedi? How fucking lame would that be? No, let the legendary sword be legendary.
I understand what Nintendo was trying to do. I think there might have been better ways to do it. I think of... I hate to keep bringing up Halo for a Zelda video, but it really does remind me of kind of what I was talking about with Halo and games similar to that, where they had a mentality with games like Halo of giving the player options, but not giving them too many, where you might have a weapon that's really good, but it's going to be used up pretty soon. When it's not like Skyrim, where you can just rely on your loadout of weapons without having to ever think twice about what weapon you're going to pull out. When you don't have to worry about that, you're just going to end up using the exact same thing over and over. And anyone who's played the bad Halos understands that gameplay is not fun when you stick with the light rifle in Halo 4, and that's the only gun you ever use. It is boring. What a good game does is it encourages you to switch. It encourages you, hey, try switching to another gun. And in the context of Halo, since that series only gave you 2 weapon slots, it was, use up a gun, switch to a different weapon, switch to a sword. The swords run out of charge. Switch to another weapon. And what it does is it encourages you to use stuff. Whatever you can find. Use a weapon that you might not have even considered, but it's what you've got. Just use it all up, chuck it at the enemy, move on to something else. I can understand. I imagine that's probably what Nintendo was going for with Breath of the Wild, is they did not want the player to unlock like a sword and just stick with that sword, and then 60 hours down the line that player is complaining that the game is too easy or the game is just boring, that they're doing the exact same thing. What that weapon degradation does is it keeps the player constantly scouring for new weapons. It keeps the player constantly thinking in the back of their head, should I use up this weapon so I can then swap to a better one? Maybe I'm about to do a combat shrine, where I fight off against a robot. I can switch to that after. So maybe I should use up this sword first, this weird great sword, this weird claymore that I rarely ever use. Maybe I should use this up for the battle. And I understand that's probably what their goal was. I do think it's a little too fast. I think if they maybe made the degradation a little higher, or if they added a way for you to repair your weapon, maybe at the cost of a mineral. I was thinking a little bit of Minecraft, like you can use up your tools. But if you've got, say, maybe a diamond or two, maybe if you've got some materials, some gemstones, maybe you can use that to repair a select few number of, higher tier weapons. Just an idea, but that's my thoughts, I understand why they did it. I definitely dislike it in a lot of aspects. And I actually think that's a part of the game that Tears of the Kingdom majorly improved upon.
Yeah, it did make it slightly more bearable.
Craft your own weapons.
And then fusing them with other items and stuff.
I will also give him credit where credit's due. When you see how fucking big Breath of the Wild is, and you're like, hey, we're going to do something that we haven't done with Zelda ever, I think they took a lot of risks and all right, if people hate it, we can fix it in the next one. I legit, as someone who started to make a game right now, there's this parts where I look at, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep it in the demo right now, and if I get enough hate for it, I'll fucking change it later.
You just don't know. You don't know until a bunch of players start screaming and yelling at you. And even then, what if you change it back? And now those same players are complaining that the game is too boring, that it's too repetitive. So that's how I see it. I see Nintendo was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Did they make the right call? We really can't say for sure. I just know people hate the weapon degradation.
It was obnoxious, though.
And I hate it as well. It gets really obnoxious.
It just needs a tweaking.
It did. And I think, especially when you go into it with the wrong mindset. As I said, I started Breath of the Wild. I dropped off. And the weapon degradation, that was kind of something I got annoyed with. It's like, I can't even save my weapons. And then I fully got into Tears of the Kingdom. finished that, went back to Breath of the Wild, completed that finally, and it did made me appreciate those systems a little more, because I approached the game as a Zelda game. I didn't approach it as like a Skyrim or as like an RPG. I didn't approach it as like a Far Cry or GTA. It was, oh, this is a Zelda game. This isn't a game where you're grinding for XP or where you're doing side quests just to make a little bit of money. It's no, you got to focus on what you're going to get. You have to be aware of the items that you're managing. And I don't know, I had a lot more fun with it. It wasn't as big of a problem, me revisiting it, as I remember it was when I first tried the game out. But that may just be me.
See, it's interesting you say that. Coming from the perspective of someone who has played, like, probably 70 to 80% of all the Zelda games, it's funny to hear you say, and I don't mean in, like, a mocking way, it's funny to hear you say, like, it's a Zelda game, it's just supposed to be like this. Whereas for me, this is the least Zelda-feeling Zelda game I've ever played. I like, it's...
And I should clarify, when I say I approached it like a Zelda game, maybe I should clarify. I approached it as you're supposed to approach Zelda Breath of the Wild, I should say.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I don't know, there's a lot of... I mean, we could probably get into this more later as it comes up, but a lot of the changes to this game and the sequel to, you know, work with the new format of an open world type game completely changed large aspects of the Zelda formula that have been present since Ocarina of Time. And I know I'm not alone. Like, there are a lot of people like me who take issue with certain things. And mind you, I am not at all saying there's no room for growth or change or experimentation. I think it's awesome Nintendo tried something new. But in a lot of ways, there are things about Breath of the Wild that just do not feel like a Zelda game. And it can show.
Titus, I can back you up on that one. Breath of the Wild is kind of what RE4 was to the Resident Evil franchise.
That is a great comparison, Berk. That is a great comparison.
Oh, RE4. I loved that 2023 game.
Yeah, so true.
But, like, you come from this very, like, tenured, like, players know what to expect, where it's, oh, you do a cool thing, you go to a dungeon, you get a cool new item, and it's usable for the rest of the game. Versus this is where you get all the items at the beginning of the game in terms of your toolbox. You learn how to do, like, shield surfing and all that cool stuff, but there's only, like, 4 dungeons in reality. There's only 4 dungeons, and they're kind of not great either.
Right. My biggest issue, this is, I guess, like, the biggest issue I have with Breath of the Wild is you never feel like you grow. I mean, despite Zelda not truly being an RPG, most Zelda games are perfectly catered to, like, how do I put this? They're crafted specifically so that it is a point A to point B experience. Yeah, there's room for you to explore and puzzle solve and adventure, but, you know, it's specifically designed so that you go from point A to point B. You have a significant growth in character. You discover a new item that is meaningful, that it opens the world up more, or that helps you grow as a character, like a boomerang or a hook shot or a heart piece or something. And it drastically expands how you interact with the world from then on. But with Breath of the Wild, and mind you, this issue gets a little better in the sequel, but in Breath of the Wild, because of the nature of it being an open world game, they can't design the world in that pre-crafted way. You see a cave and you think, wow, that's so interesting. I can go anywhere in this game. There's this random cave in the mountain. I can see it in the distance. I can go there and I can explore what's inside. I wonder what's inside. And 90% of the time, you are going to use up a significant portion of your tools and resources that will be completely disposed of by the time you're done, just so that at the end of this struggle, of this exploration, what am I rewarded with for my desire to explore? I am given more tools or material that are the same as the ones I just used up en masse to get this new one, and I will repeat the process when I find something else interesting in the distance. And sure, the process of it is entertaining, it's fun, it's exciting, but I don't feel like I've truly gained anything or grown when I explore a huge portion of the world and all I got was another weapon that's going to break in 25 hits that I'm going to use up 2/3 of the way through the next cave or the next interesting part of the world where the reward will again be another material that I will use up in the same way. A lot of things in Zelda, in Breath of the Wild, feel that way. Or maybe you'll get like a Korok seed or something. And mind you, the sequel makes it a little bit better. Like in the sequel, sometimes you get actual, like, you get new outfits, you know, new armor, and those aren't breakable. Those are actual, tangible. That's something. It's better. You know, it feels like an actual, you know, significant reward. But, you know, for at least for Breath of the Wild, it just doesn't feel like you gain anything. You're not rewarded. If you're not rewarded for all your exploration, then what's the point of having so much to explore if it isn't meaningful in the first place?
This is where I would heavily disagree. You are correct in the sense that things like weapons and items such as that, it is very different from Zelda of old. And for the record, I just recently played Ocarina of Time. We'll probably talk about that in a future video. But with Breath of the Wild, I disagree with your statement on there is no sense of progression. I think the sense of progression might be a little more abstract. It's not a Metroidvania. It's not, hey, I have these boots that let me hover, and I can now cross this one part of the game that is a giant pit that I could not cross before. It's not that. It's really not that anymore. What it does give you is it does give you a kind of more abstract sense of learning how to play the game better. I really do think the best part of growing with Zelda, with Breath of the Wild, I should say, you genuinely, at least to me, you can feel yourself get better and progress. It is when you start out the game, and maybe that's because I started the game blind and I've spent so much time with it that I've kind of grown to learn all of the game systems. And like starting out, you don't have a grasp of all the game systems. You don't have any of your abilities. You don't have any particular pieces of armor. You don't have any items. You don't have like bows, arrow types, things like that. You don't really have an understanding of weapons or like what a weapon type is and how to utilize certain weapon types over others. And of course, you know, you're constantly swapping out between those weapons, but now you're way more aware of all those systems in play. You're now way more aware of, these like one-handed swords I should use if I need to block. These spears I should be using if I need to keep an enemy at a distance. I have a flame sword that I've saved up just for this moment so I can set these groups of enemies on fire. Or I've got an electric sword because I'm encountering this guardian robot and I'm going to shock him so I can stun him. There's a lot of skill systems in place, and I like that.
Learning how to use shield surf.
Exactly. When you like start beating the divine beasts, you start unlocking your abilities, start being able to utilize those in specific moments, and even not even just combat, like in just exploration of the world, kind of understanding
what's
what you're
Falco's
supposed
name?
to be looking for. Sorry,
I
what?
forget his real name.
Rivali, yeah, the champion from
the fucking Harvey Birdman.
Yeah.
I don't remember his
Harvey
name, but
Birdman.
the moment you get the ability to just jump, you're like, cool. Climbing sections aren't as big of a deal anymore.
Finally, I don't have to care about rain making me not be able to play.
That's progress.
And you unlock items as in the form of equipment, so like that will stick with you, but it's different. It's a different level of progression, and it's a progression that I, as say like an action game enjoyer, appreciate. It's not like, oh, I've unlocked the ability to open the red door. It's not that level of progression. Instead, it's the progression of, oh, I'm way less scared of these enemies now. These enemies that I consider terrifying when I first started playing, I now know how to deal with them effortlessly. And it's honestly what makes going back and playing those like those early parts of the game, knowing that you're a lot better at it. That, to me, that's where the progression lies, is in the skills. And I understand Zelda players, when you talk about Zelda, you talk about the old Zelda, you talk about unlocking doors and opening up new passageways, but I do think there's a fun level of progression here. When you're at that final boss and you have all of your armor and you have all of the weapons that you have saved up for this moment and all the items that you've saved up for this moment, it does feel like you have completed an incredible journey. You were talking about how different this game was to Zeldas of the past.
I can get into that.
The dungeons.
Dungeons are like the cornerstone identity of Zelda, right? Think about the OG ones. You go, was it 8? It's 8 dungeons originally in the first
It's usually
one?
6 to 8, something like that.
Yeah, 6 to 8, but they all have their theme and identity and a monster to overcome. And it has its own theme music, it's got its own gimmick, and you can argue that with the 4 beasts. But it just felt like the identity and the theme revolved more around the champions, right? It was you working with Sidon, and you ride his back to shoot the generators. And they're like, oh, that's a really cool identity. I wish there's more of that stuff. No. You go on the seals when you fight the Gerudo challenge one. So forth and so forth, right? Like, those are cool, but that's not the dungeon. That's just the hype piece getting into it. And I love that shit. I wish there was more of that going in. But it's also, the other thing was you got an item that you would carry for the rest of the game from that dungeon. That was the sense of progression Titus is referring to, that you take a piece of that dungeon with you. And Andy, you brought up a fantastic point. Well, what about the ability you got, right? But it's not like an item that solves it, I guess. It's a tactile feel, you know?
My thing, right, is like Berk said, the dungeons are an iconic part of Zelda games. Honestly, the dungeons more often than not make or break a huge part of the meat of a Zelda game. But with this new format of an open world setting, you know, they had to change it up a bit, and so we got, for dungeons, we only really got 4 dungeons, technically 5, and those are Hyrule Castle and the Divine Beasts. It's basically giant Magitech Megazords, basically, that are piloted by one of the champions from each of the 4 major races of people in the game. And I'm just gonna say it, the Divine Beast dungeons suck. They really suck. They're just not fun. I agree
They're
with
not
Berk.
that bad.
I agree with Berk that the lead up to them is really cool. Like working with Riju to
I love that part. Yep.
Sand Seal Surf is cool. Or like riding on the back of Sidon to take out his Divine Beasts enough that you can enter it. That's cool. You know, like a lot of that is those opening segments are really cool. But then you get inside and it's just so lame. It's so lame. They're just so limited. I just entered it. I'm like, wow, this is just a less good shrine.
And I was gonna say, kind of on the topic of shrines as well, because I think that's where they put the meat of their dungeon content is into the Sheikah shrines. I do agree. As fun as, because I enjoyed the dungeons, I really did. It was unique, being able to manipulate the Divine Beast, being able to move it, trying to solve puzzles like that. There are parts of it obviously that are annoying, but at the very least it was a fun breath of fresh air. But then you got to the bosses, and those guys were definitely annoying. I think my issue, mechanically aside, I definitely think they probably should have done way more different aesthetics. I think even if it was cause I'll be honest here, if it was the exact same layout as they had, but say one Divine Beast was maybe filled with sand and the inside looked like an Egyptian pyramid temple, but then the other Divine Beast, maybe the one in Zora's Domain, maybe that one is more aquatic. If they had switched up the aesthetic, if they had added in, because everything looks like Sheikah technology, everything has the glowing orange and blue, it's kind of metal and stonework, and
what
that's
you're describing is typical Zelda dungeons.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a snarky jerk. It's just it's funny to hear you say that. I'm that's crazy, because that's what admittedly the sequel improved on by giving us traditional dungeons again that were allowed to be different from each other.
I know. I'm just saying aesthetically as well. Because I understand what Nintendo had to do. I understand that they were stuck with, we need as much content. We need to get a bunch of content. We need to get all of these shrines. The shrines themselves have to be kind of separate from the world, and they also have to be bite-sized because there's going to be a lot of them. Let's get as many as we can. And so there are a bunch of shrines. Some are much better than others, and they all blend together, even if just aesthetically. They didn't do that, and I understand why. Not a lot's known about this game's development. We understand that they had a rough time settling on what they were going to do for the sequel. We understand that, which is why Tears of the Kingdom was the way it was, because the developers did not want to immediately start working on a brand new open world concept. They're like, let's just stick with what we've got. But yeah, I mean, that's most of my issues with it. I understand people who dislike Breath of the Wild for its dungeon content, especially having just played Ocarina of Time. Like, I understand. I get what people were probably hoping for, and I get why a Ocarina of Time player would have been a little disappointed in this game.
I will say really quick, just to be fair, I'm not like an Ocarina of Time fanboy just because it's the first one I played. I actually am a person who thinks Ocarina of Time is like, it's just pretty good. I don't think it's like the masterpiece most people make it out to be.
He's a Nintendo purist. He thinks N64 is the best console ever made.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm a real Aaron Hansen. I'm a real Ego Raptor over here.
It's so fun. It is so funny. It is so funny how thanks for bringing that up on my video, Titus. I'm glad I now have that stuck in my video. That fucker.
Remember when Ego Raptor made videos? Here's your oh god, I'm old, I'm crippled, I'm ancient moment for you viewers at home.
Ego Raptor gives me the vibes of if you're at a bar with a girl, you tell her to cover her drink. I shouldn't say that. That's
damn.
That's
what
terrible.
The fuck?
That's terrible.
I hate Game
cut this
Grumps.
part out.
Cut that from the video.
Yeah, cut
this
that.
all
Director, cut
this. Staying in. But I don't know where I was going. I was going along the lines of like the N64, the N64. I always liked that. There was just a period of time on the internet where that was everyone had to kind of like say that was the best video game console. Ocarina of Time, N64. Those are the best things ever. And fuck you if you don't like them.
I certainly respect the N64, and a lot of the games from it are iconic. But I own an N64, and as someone who didn't grow up with an N64, I'm gonna be honest, it's just the GameCube is better, and I didn't.
I was
grow
about
up
to
with
say
either.
I will if people want to go on the nostalgia binge, if you want to argue PlayStation 2, 360, or GameCube era, like any of that, I'm willing to hear you out on any of it because they're all goated.
Because we all know the real answer is PC.
Except like, there's a thing that can play them all.
Have fun. Oh, you guys are having your little fight. Oh, I'm gonna go play Half-Life 2. But
I can play that on my on my console.
Good luck.
Hold on, I just jailbroke my Switch to be a Steam Deck. I'll see you there.
I don't know where I was going with that. I like some of the physics puzzles, but having to use my controller and like turn an object using motion control, I felt a little bit like an old man. I felt a little bit like my dad trying to handle a Wiimote with how frustrated I got at parts. Those fucking ball puzzles.
Yeah, the ball puzzles were rough. I will grant you that. They were rough.
Oh, you talking like the mazes?
Yeah.
Didn't you just flip the whole maze over so you could just roll it on the flat side?
I did.
Go wherever you did?
I did. So sometimes I did that, yeah. Which leads me to another thing. I enjoy how you can kind of brute force stuff. That was something that the developers talked about, is they wanted physics puzzles. They didn't necessarily want like their puzzles to be go here, get a key, unlock this door, go here, unlock another door. They wanted the puzzles should be kind of based on their physics. They made a physics engine and then they built puzzles around that rather than the other way around.
Right.
I think it works in a lot of parts. In some parts, it can get a little annoying, but I play Breath of the Wild, and I'm going through a dungeon. It is fun to try and use your brain. There's an element of trying to figure out what the solution is, and then there's also an element of, let's see if I can outthink the designer here. Let's see if I can come up with my own solution. That's fun. That's fun to me.
That was one of my favorite things, was just fucking around with the physics engine. Sending the poor little moblins off cliff sides with bombs. Favorite pastime. Going bowling with a bomb. Favorite pastime. Throwing rocks. You get where I'm going with this. But also like fucking around with the stasis engine.
I was going to say the stasis.
Have you guys seen those video posts on variety of social medias where like you would get stopped by one of the assassin enemies?
Yep.
But they would
I know
preset,
exactly what you're saying.
they'd set up like a hilariously large cube to fall on their head, or some complex Rube Goldberg of Death Machine.
They would set up like a rock and status it and then hit it in the direction of the Yiga clan assassin, and then they'd interact with them. And so right as the dialogue would finish playing, it would just yeet them into the stratosphere.
And it was amazing. Like, Breath of the Wild is one of those things that it had so many fun tools to play with, and I think they did the right thing of making everything good and polished. But the problem was they ran out of how to string it all together entirely cohesively.
Yeah, and I guess, because I mean, we were kind of ragging on it earlier. Let's talk about the good here, because there's a lot
There's
of good.
so much good.
The shrines are excellent. I will give them that.
I do like the shrines, even if they all get a little samey.
I'm about to say, if you cut it down to like, was it like 120 shrines or something like that?
Oh yeah.
120, yeah.
Like 80 would have been fine. Because like, how many times did you roll your eyes at a major test of strength showing up?
Yeah, those were the major tests are actually pretty helpful if you're weapon farming, but I do understand, because a part of me wonders, would it have been better for them to maybe combine some shrines? So it's like,
That's what I meant by.
Here's a larger dungeon, but at the same time, I kind of like how bite-sized they are. You don't spend more than 10 minutes on a shrine. You're in and out, and it's fun, and you're not stuck with a mechanic. You're not stuck using like a puzzle mechanic for an hour, having to like keep using it. This is my last allusion to Ocarina of Time, I promise. As much as I enjoyed parts of Ocarina of Time, there are always those dungeons that you've spent 2 hours slowly going through, and you're just sick of it by the end. You're like, I'm so done. Just give me the fucking boss. Let me leave.
I see you missed a key in Water Temple.
Oh, the Water Temple is the worst. Not even Water Temple. Like, gosh, this like the Spirit Temple. I didn't really like. There were dungeons that were way too long, and pacing is a big thing with Breath of the Wild. And I think that's a lot of, even going back to weapon degradation, a lot of the complaints you could level at this game. I would also argue maybe there's a reason the game's like that. Maybe there's a reason why Nintendo didn't want these dungeons that like stretched out. And so I don't know. I don't mind the bite-sized dungeons. I think it works. Keeps you exploring. Keeps you looking for more dungeons. And it makes them more fun to approach, because you're not like, okay, here's a dungeon. Do I have 40 minutes to spare? It's a dungeon. I can knock this out of the park. Let's quick do this. So that's what I think. But I do understand your point. There are a lot of them. There is a lot.
And don't get me wrong, with someone with ADHD, it's super fun to have the fucking radar detector for Shrine go off and go, huh? Where? And then, like, scramble around looking for it when you're just fucking around. But there is a limit when you're sweeping those last few. Mm-hmm. And again, this is like someone complaining, I've played this game for 300 hours and I have so many complaints. Like, you played it for 300 fucking hours. You could have done something else. So I keep that argument in my head a little tapered.
But like, just exploration in general, it's great. This is, as like an open world, I love the climbing. I know
I actually really like the climbing too.
It's a lot of fun.
Except when it rains.
Except when it rains. But it is fun seeing like, can I get up to that mountain? And then you kind of realize, oh, I can. Oh, wait, I don't have enough stamina. And then then you're stuck in the process of, do I let go? Or do I think I can maybe make it? I think I can get to a ledge.
Do I eat some of the food I prepped?
Yeah.
Is this worth the fight, or am I gonna have to min-max menu putting on the climbing gear?
Because those are my fondest memories of this game. Is just I'm climbing mountains, exploring some forest somewhere, maybe loosely following, like trying to explore a part of the map, maybe kind of loosely going towards a shrine or a lookout tower.
The exploration is definitely where this game shines.
How did you react to your first time running into a dragon?
I was like, oh crap! They brought those back from the original game. Like, they remembered they exist. That's crazy.
Did you also really awesome. Have the awful American instinct like I did to shoot it with an arrow, and then I got rewarded for shooting said dragon?
I mean, to be fair, in a game like Zelda, I go by the logic that anything that isn't like a sapient being is probably like ontologically evil, so it's okay to kill it.
Zelda has like it's like Star Wars rules for monsters. It's not like there's not like monsters where you're like, oh, maybe it's sentient, maybe I'm going to communicate with it. If it can't communicate, it's evil.
I mean, to be
destroy
fair,
it.
within the lore, like outside of very rare circumstances, the monsters are literally byproducts of evil. Like
Satan.
they're
It's their
objectively they
Satan.
are evil.
Yeah.
Like there are some exceptions, like in Skyward Sword, there was like a demon who like wanted to be good, but like that's like like you know
The
that's
exception,
not the rule.
rule.
That's an exception. You see in cutscenes that the monsters are literally formed out of darkness. Like they are
That's true.
made specifically to be like living killing machines, like to persecute good people. Like that's what they're made to do, you know? So to be fair, I don't really feel bad about aiming to kill a giant dragon because this isn't a world where I'm assuming, oh, that's a wild animal. It's a world where I'm assuming, oh, this is a evil monster who's going to kill people.
We'll talk. I want to talk a little bit about the lore later. I keep saying we'll talk about it later, but I want to focus on the exploration.
What were your favorite areas you found while you were exploring? And I can start with mine. I really like those labyrinths and the corners of the
Labyrinths
map where
are
you got
very
the
cool.
barbarian set.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was fun, especially with the guardians that were kind of stalking them. That was fun. It was like running through a maze, and then there's this guardian just kind of crawling around, and you have to like at a certain point you get enough gear where guardians just aren't a threat anymore. But in the early game, that was genuinely some of the most kind of fun horror stuff. Just like walking through a field, and then you hear that fucking music, and it's like what, and this giant robot spider comes chasing you. I like the Guardians as a concept. They're one of if no matter how the Zelda series kind of goes in the future, I like the idea of a pseudo mini boss enemy that you have to just kind of avoid at first before you start figuring out ways to defeat them.
Very Metroid Fusion, run away from your suit-esque horror.
I guess more like Metroid Dread too.
Oh, Metroid
Do you all
Dread.
remember gliding through that one section? And then you just see laser dot upon laser
Yep.
dot
Oh, yeah.
upon laser dot.
Yeah.
That's like the first tower, right? You have to, yeah. I like that. I like that area to explore, as like dangerous as it is with all the guardians. I mean, obligatory. There's Lon Lon Ranch, and I have a theory about the world as well, and we'll get into
Yeah.
that later. But I have a theory about this game timeline wise, or at least kind of
Alright.
thematically what it's supposed to be. But
I have my own theory that I would like to
Okay.
share.
share with the class. With exploration, a lot of the time I spent exploring, it was always up in the mountains. It was like finding those. There's that like one woman who has kind of her cabin up by one of the shrines, just up there, and it's super cozy, just nice and cozy in the winter. Like that jungle area in the south, which rarely got used. There's not a temple down there. There's like a few shrines and a few side quests.
There's also the durians, which are helpful for some of the meals you need to make.
It got used much more in the sequel.
Correct. But I like that area was kind of fun because it was out of the way, and it was just like, what's even down here? And it's beautiful. I love like the good forest density. I never really thought I would say that about a Switch game, but you really do feel like you're going through these like dense forests where it's like, oh man, I can barely see the sky. Like there's so much foliage. It feels like a real place. It really does. Hateno Village, great little town. That's your go-to. That's where you're constantly going back and forth from. Very idyllic. Link gets a house. Link finally is a homeowner. The ultimate male fantasy.
He lives with his wife. It's nice. Good for him.
I like the look of Gerudo Village. It's a departure from how that region is usually depicted in other Zelda games, but I kind of like it. I like we're not just like in a dense, like super narrow canyon. We're out in the sand dunes. There's like almost like a Babylonian looking village. It looks cool. It's very colorful. Or like when you're climbing up, when you first get through those like Twin Peaks, and you're like, I bet I can climb those. And you try climbing them, and you're just like, what am I doing? Is there anything up here? And then you get up there, and you realize there's a shrine, and you're like, oh hell yeah, I got this shrine. And then it's asking you for this puzzle that you can't complete, and you're like, why is that? Oh, because there's another shrine on the other mountain peak that you have to now go to. I would actually say that's my favorite part of the game, or that area of the game. When you get past the Kakariko village, but even kind of the area around that. I love the look for that. That's where you're able to first get a horse. That is where, once you get into Kakariko, I love the design of Kakariko village. That
Very old
being
school
kind of
Japanese.
feudal Japanese.
Well, the Sheikah are basically ninjas, so I guess if you were gonna make any town the Japanese one. I think my favorite part of exploring, like the part that sticks out to me most, is specifically Hyrule Castle. There's something menacing about exploring a fully, rendered 3D, Hyrule Castle that's been corrupted by evil. Obviously a lot of Zelda games have you go through Hyrule Castle, but in a game like Breath of the Wild where it's massive and there's so many twists and turns, I thought it was really exciting. I thought it was so cool when I was exploring a random castle spire and I found my way into Zelda's bedroom, and then I found her old diary. That was such a cool, lore moment that was, hidden away. No guide tells you about that, you know what I mean? And I just found it. And it's got as a guy who's really into lore, I thought it was so cool to see such a huge piece of the Zelda story, the story of this game's, its backstory, the character. I thought that was so cool to just randomly find that. And obviously I later find out, most people eventually find out where it is, and now it's common knowledge. But when the game was first going around, everyone was just kind of on their own. That sticks out to me as a very memorable moment. Other than that, the most memorable part of the game, probably Eventide Island. That one island where you get all your stuff taken away.
I was about to say, one of the first things I did, I saw that fucking island out there. I'm like, I bet I can get out there. And then it turns into Lost. It's like, especially if you're like think about where you are progress wise when you first get to Hateno Village. It's like you have barely any hearts, you have barely any gear, and then you just wind up on this island thinking there's probably a shrine on here. I'll get it.
Yeah, and you end up having to, at least I did, I bomb spammed the heck out of the giant monster. I forget what they're called. I just bomb spammed it until it died. That's
the abilities it gave you. I didn't even really address that earlier. The tools that you have are a little weird and very hyper specific. It's like you think about it. It's like, okay, we have a fantasy game. You have a sword, a bow and arrow, and you have a couple magical abilities. It's like, what are those abilities? What do you think of? Well, you can freeze objects, but carry their momentum. It's like, okay. You can summon cubes of ice 3 at a time in the water. Huh? Okay. And you can summon a bomb that rolls, or a bomb that's cube shaped. I always thought it was funny. It's such a funny, eclectic collection of abilities.
It is a very random set of the bomb is iconic to Zelda, but making only 4 essential key items basically, and then giving them to you from the start, and then making half of them just different kinds of bomb is a very bold take. But considering, like you were saying earlier, that they really wanted to play around with the physics engine they made, it makes sense why that would be one of the key pieces that they introduce to players.
My only gripe is there's no grappling hook.
Oh, I missed the grappling hook so much.
But going back to exploration, and you even mentioned the dragons earlier, I remember one of my times exploring Mount Lanayru, and you stumble upon that dragon, which you don't even realize what it is at the time. There's this goddess statue, and there's frozen water, and this just corrupted dragon starts flying around, and you're like, am I in a boss? Is this did I just stumble upon this epic Shadow of the Colossus style boss fight? And it's just fun, just because correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any quest that points you there. That's just if you're exploring, you'll stumble upon that.
I was thinking about the lightning puzzles.
I'm about to say that, yeah, the lightning. Because they're like shrine quests and throwing like a metal piece of your equipment to like shock enemies. That was always kind of fun.
There's so many goofy ways to win fights.
Yeah, I will say the cool thing about the reliance on the physics engine over everything else in exploration and combat makes it so you get very cool little videos on your feed sometimes where you just see people way smarter than you find out really funny ways to do stuff you would never think of. Like just using stasis to like fling yourself on a boulder from one end of the map to the other in like 10 seconds. That's insane. Like that stuff's insane. Mad respect to anyone who figured out how to do that and then pulled it off. It's crazy.
Admittedly, it was the first thing I did once I saw I could yeet an item. I was like, but what if I were to stand on top of it? And of course, I didn't go very far because I didn't understand the balancing act it required. But it was one of those, like,
Right.
I think that's the beauty and the joy of the newer direction the series goes, is that it does something a lot of games don't do very well anymore, outside of like Minecraft. Is the first thing that comes to my mind of, what if I just fucked with this for a minute and found out? What if I just experimented?
Experimenting. That's definitely one thing I think Breath of the Wild really excels at. And even Tears of the Kingdom, as many complaints as I know people have to that game.
You mean Legend of Zelda Nuts and Bolts by Rareware?
Legend of Zelda Gary's Mod Edition.
Yeah. I hated that stupid hand mechanic, the fuse mechanic. Like I
Oh, it
didn't
was
like it.
great. How dare you?
Hold on, I'm actually here for the fuse mechanic as well. I thought it was pretty neat.
Oh, well, like, using it for, like, your weapons and equipment was fine. Like, I'm more talking, like, when I had to, like, move stuff around the environment. I don't know. It was so finicky.
I had so much fun building stupid robots and stupid things that should never work.
I built so many airplanes in that game.
I mostly just used it to quickly create barriers or, like, vehicles to, like, move across bodies of water and stuff like, I didn't use it. I mostly just used it to either create shields or create, like, platforming. I didn't get too creative. I don't know. My thought was, wow, I really wish I were adventuring and fighting right now instead of trying to glue two pieces of wood together so that it'll stand upright. So I could get up here. Like, I don't know.
You don't like the sign quests? Having to get the sign to stay up?
I hated those side quests. I hated those side quests. They were the bane of my existence.
There's so many. But going back to Breath of the Wild, the wilderness. There's something that it's become kind of a recurring thing where people talk about, like, how big does an open world game need to be? And you have Todd Howard up there whatever he's trying to sell, whatever snake oil he's trying to sell this year. The way, like, those kind of games are is they're very dense. A game like Fallout or Skyrim, they're very dense. These worlds feel very small, which is ironic because Breath of the Wild, I'd say scale-wise, is a very small open world, like, compared to a lot of others. Yet it feels very vast. And I think that has to do in part to the movement is a little slower. It takes a little while for you. Obviously, once you unlock fast travel, it's not a problem. But when you're discovering stuff, it can take a while for you to get from, one town to another. And there's also just the amount of wilderness that the game has, just forests and lakes and rivers, which in and of themselves become obstacles because you can't just go from point A to point B. You have to figure out, how do I cross this running river? Or how do I climb that mountain? Or how do I get through this forest and it's nighttime and I keep getting attacked? And yeah, I found that really, really the best part about the game is just kind of before you really understood, like, because obviously everyone nowadays you can just go online and look up like a fully completed map and you're like, oh, I need to complete this part and this part. The best part of this game is when you know nothing about it, when you're still uncovering stuff, when you're like, man, is there a town over there? Let me go try and look. Let me see what's over the next hill. And if it's all right, I might want to lead us into a big part of this game, which is the presentation. We're talking visuals, we're talking graphics, we're talking art style, music, character design even.
Voice acting, I suppose?
I do have a question I know that did spark a lot of debate back when I first played it. Music, or lack of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering when we were gonna get to that.
Because
I like the music. I like how
was such
chill
a
it is.
cornerstone.
I understand. I think a game should learn to be quiet as well. Maybe there wasn't enough music that ramped up. I totally get it. But at the same time, I love Breath of the Wild's music. And I understand Zelda fans, they want their N64 MIDI. I get it. I get you guys want your music playing on loop 24/7, causing you to go insane as you're stuck on an hour-long temple. I get you guys want that.
Yes.
But I enjoy the relaxing, gentle tones of Breath of the Wild. I really enjoy that.
I mean, does Halo not have like a ton of music always going?
No, that's one of the big things with Halo 1 is
I thought that was the meme, is that everybody does the oh.
That's the menu.
that's the menu screen. They're one of the and I am actually being serious here, Titus. One of the big things with Halo is Marty O'Donnell. He knows when to give you music. He also knows when to take it away, because there's parts of Halo where it's nice and quiet. You just are taking in the ambiance. You're hearing the birds chirping.
Getting to hear the fucking reactor core and the assault on the control room, that the gentle hum of the electronics. Oh yeah.
Hearing
Good
rivers,
stuff.
rushing water. It's great. And then the music ramps up at a big moment. Then the music ramps up. Meanwhile, if you go play like a game like Quake, it's here's Trent Reznor playing a song, and we're just going to loop it until you beat the level. But that's more of a discussion about music itself. I have no problems with Breath of the Wild's music. I'd be curious to know what you two haters think of Breath of the Wild's
I'm
music.
not a hater. It's just it's another one of the gear shifts that was very unexpected, is that Legend of Zelda hasn't been known for a very prominent soundtrack, right? It gets played in fucking
Iconic.
symphonies now because of how iconic it is.
Iconic.
Right, it's very aggressive. So you have this more subtle, subdued, like, tied to events where, like, oh, you got on a horse, you finally get some music. But when you're out in the wilderness, you maybe get, like, a fucking Minecraft level of bum, 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 bum as you keep walking around. And it's not bad. It's never intrusive. I never found it. It was just, it's very weird coming from any other Zelda game.
Yeah, it's not that it's bad. It's just
It's so different.
lacking.
And the music that does play, fucking phenomenal. Are you kidding me? The music tracks for the boss fights are actually pretty good. I fucking loved running into Accordion Boy. That's the thing, was that it made
Cass?
the music a
Yeah.
fucking treat. I love Cass.
Did you ever, speaking of birds and music, if you ever completed that quest with all the those kid birds who you have to kind of wrangle up together? Do you remember that?
Mhm. Yeah.
And they play their song. Remember, you have to play the notes in order.
Mm-hmm.
A staple in Zelda.
This is such a fun little touch, by the way. When you beat that quest, the birds, they're now permanently like on the tower, standing together. They hum the background music. Whatever background music's playing, they're humming it. So when you walk up to them, the background music fades out and it is replaced. The exact same notes are replaced by them doing the notes themselves.
That's so fucking
That is
cute.
a cool touch. Yeah, I don't know. I played that game and I'm like, man, something feels missing. And then I literally right now look it up. I'm like, that's what's missing. Where the heck is Koji Kondo in the credits? There's no ballad. There's no Song of Storms. There's no Ballad of the Windfish.
Yes,
there's
there's
no
Song of
Song of
Storms.
Time in here. Well, the Song of Time is in here. But yeah, like, I don't know. Like, the music isn't bad by any means. I get that it's going for something different. It's going for a more environmental backing feel to fit the type of game it is. But like, on top of all the other things already that people like me are like, wow, this just doesn't feel like a Zelda game. And then you take away the music and it's like, man, where's the roaring pizzazz? Where's the bravado? Where's the excitement? I don't know. Like, I want to walk into the desert and start hearing the Gerudo Desert. I want to start like salsa dancing in my chair to mariachi music. Like, I want, you know what I mean? I want to dance in my chair while playing the game to the music, and you just didn't get a lot of that. Now, there were some really good pieces. Notably, one of my favorites, spoiler alert for Breath of the Wild, by the way, really early like at the beginning of the game, when you meet the ghost of the last king of Hyrule and you're speaking with him, he has like his own signature song that plays in the back, and if you isolate that song and listen to it, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful song. Like, you know, a lot of the backing songs are good. It's just you don't get to hear enough of it.
I would argue there could have been a balance, because I'm thinking of the scenario where you spend 100 hours in the Gerudo Desert and the N64 Gerudo Desert theme is playing constantly without reprieve.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Well, I don't want that, but I get having a little bit more of that, because I really think maybe they should have added some classic tracks just to appease you Zelda boomers. I'm being facetious, by the way.
You know what? The Sheikah Slate could have just gave us the fucking music we wanted to play, like another famous open game, Metal Gear Solid 5, where you could just have a fucking
you're telling
Sony
me we could
Walkman.
have. You're telling me we could have Super Sentai, Megazords, time travel, a machine that almost borderline brings someone back from the dead, like giant walking mechs. Like, we can have all this crazy technology and you don't have a portable music player. Like, come on.
That wasn't in the budget. I'm sorry.
On another topic of music, and this was actually brought to me by the friend I mentioned her earlier. There is in the boss music, I should say, the music that plays as you first approach each one of the 4 divine beasts.
Mm-hmm.
There is a hidden message within that music. It is a Morse code SOS. In the background of the music, you hear the SOS. And I'll even play this as well. And so what people are theorizing, and Nintendo has, I don't think, as far as I understand, Nintendo has not commented on this. This is for all 4 of the divine beasts. The theory, what people think, is this is the champions representing when they were killed by Ganon. They think the position within the song is when they realized they needed help and they were calling out to Link, or just for anybody. That's when they were calling out the SOS. And specifically, Rivali, his is right at the very end. So the implication being he tried to hold out the longest, and he only gave up after everyone else already did. Very dark, very cool. If it's very cool hint at the lore, I always thought.
It is in character for Rivali, considering how prideful the guy is.
Falco was a tryhard.
And it's very unnerving when you hear it for the first time, because you can hear it as well. I just thought it was fun,
That's
cool
a rad
addition.
detail.
But before we go more into like sound design, I do want to talk just other presentation, visuals and graphics. What do you guys think of this game visually?
It's purdy.
Well, it's the Switch, so it doesn't run amazing.
It really
but
doesn't.
It is pretty to look at when it does run well.
It's weird. It straddles the line between, there are parts of it that look very dated, but then it does have a really solid art style carrying it. And it makes me wonder, God, what could this game look like if it was running on better hardware?
It feels like they wanted to, and I think they've even said this, they were like, what if we take the best parts of Twilight Princess's visuals and the best parts of Skyward Sword's visuals, and we just mashed them up in a blender? That's what it feels like.
And a little bit of Wind Waker.
A little bit of Wind Waker. A little bit.
I remember when they first showed this off, people were nervous about the art style. It was like a semi kind of realistic, I say realistic, like a more grungy looking environment with cel shaded characters. And in hindsight, that works a lot. It's because the world itself is nice to explore, but the characters being cel shaded means that the characters can all be stylized. You don't get those really like gross looking people from Twilight Princess. You don't get like the really uncanny valley, like unnerving looking character designs.
Yeah, those kids were scary looking. the kids from your village are very scary looking.
I think it works. All the character designs. The armor looks great. The Zora looked great. Everyone loves the Gerudo. We know why. Come on. The art
Pick
style
your
is
Gerudo. They're
The
all
armor
good.
design is very cool.
very cool.
Very cool.
I like the metallic effect they did. I like how metal looks when you're wearing like the knight armor, or when you're wearing like the Vo Gerudo armor, that like hint of gold. I like that. Even just visually too, like the colors do pop in this game. It is very pretty. Like watching like the sunset, or when it's like midday and you're strolling through the desert, it's all bright and sunny and it looks pretty. I don't know. It's such a visually appealing game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, despite going back, jokes aside, ironically, despite the fact that it's a desert, I think the Gerudo area of the game might be one of the most visually beautiful to look at, just because the color design choices are really excellent. The design choices for, like, the architecture and the clothing, it's a very obviously, Middle Eastern type of design. A lot of
It's
the
like
clothing,
Babylonian.
yeah, a lot of the Egyptian, Babylonian, Persian, yeah, and like a lot of the, the clothing design, the armor, the architecture really shows up, and like it's really interesting because you see just splashes of red and blue and bright green in the midst of like this golden brown and yellow. Like it just contrasts really well. So I think, ironically, yeah, despite being in a desert, the Gerudo area and the Gerudo people in general, design-wise, might be one of the most visually appealing parts of the game. Like, it's just so... Whoever at Nintendo, whoever on the team was in charge of, like, doing that kind of, like, intricate world-building work that most people don't pay attention to, where someone clearly went through and designed all the, like, architecture and, like, the pottery and the, the little set pieces and stuff like that. Like, they did an outstanding job, especially in the Gerudo area, because it felt like you were in, like, an Arabian, Middle Eastern type culture for real. It was great.
Yeah, just all the and we kind of said that earlier, but like all the towns are great. It's good amount of density. Obviously it's a Zelda town, so it's like, why does this town only have 12 people living in it? Don't really question it. But it's like the colors. I always love Kakariko Village. I love that like almost like misty kind of darker shade of green that they've got going. Like it feels like a hidden city. I love that. It feels like you're not supposed. It feels like only insiders know where the city is. It's a neat touch.
I could be wrong, but I think Kakariko Village is supposed to be hidden in game. Like
It's
they're hiding from
well,
the Yiga clan.
Yeah, it's the Sheikah. Speaking of the Yiga clan, I love their stupid hideout. What did you?
Bananas.
Can we?
Banana Slamma.
That Yiga quest. That felt just like it felt ripped straight out of Wind Waker. That whole like, is that just me? That whole
Tone
like,
and humor. And
No, you're not
I know what
wrong.
you're talking about.
You're not wrong, and that's why I love it. I loved that. I loved the Yiga clan.
I like
They're
stealing
so
all the
funny.
bananas.
I can't believe it carried over too in Tears of the Kingdom, because I mean, spoiler alert. Who's that fat guy? Who's the fat
Master
Yiga leader?
Koga.
Koga, you just knock him into the pit.
Yeah, and it actually comes back in the story as a relevant moment in the sequel. That's so good. That's such a good choice.
But yeah, I love like you start getting to like almost autumn looking trees and stuff. It's very pretty. There's parts of this game that, despite the low hardware, they managed to achieve a good sense of scale, and there's never that immersion breaking. There's never a part where you're like, oh, I'm not in like a real world anymore. It's like everything feels nice and beautifully handcrafted. And I think that is like, for all of its faults, that's probably the best thing Breath of the Wild has going for it is a huge handcrafted world. If it doesn't feel like any area was skimped out on. It felt like whatever random little corner of the map you're on, some designer spent hours making sure that if it had a purpose, or if it's fun to be there, or if there's just fun to chill there. Like it feels very meaningful. But that might just be me reading too much into it. I just like how this game looks, even if it runs really badly sometimes.
At all 12 frames.
I straight up, The Lost Woods, it runs at like N64 levels
Yeah,
of frame rate.
bad. It's bad. Oh, dude, don't you dare set fire to any grass anywhere. It's gonna
What
be
do you
a
mean? You
nightmare.
need the free fly time.
It could be worse. It could be Scarlet and Violet rendering the entire world at all times.
But still on the topic of presentation, voice acting. We have voices in a Zelda game. Pretty good.
It's very Funimation. Let me.
How dare you?
How
by
do
the
I?
way.
Okay,
take
let me.
offense to that.
Listen. What I mean by that is, it reads very much as this was done with a lot of the same people who you hear in most things in like mainly Funimation dubs, or like a lot of like the same circles of, you know, voice actors for English dubs in America, like for games. And you know, they're fine. We are not in the 90s anymore. It is not the early 2000s where dubs are comical, and at their best, they're like either so cheesy that they become charming, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, or they're like a 1 in a million diamond in the rough, like Cowboy Bebop and Trigun. Like, it's not like that anymore, you know? It's not. I'm not a dub hater. It's just like, you can tell. That's all I'm saying. You can tell.
Sorry.
There's something to it. There's something about the mannerisms of the acting, if that makes any sense. I don't even think it's bad. I'm not saying
Which
it's
makes,
bad.
I mean, it makes sense. It's a Japanese game, so they're finally
Yeah.
they're doing voice acting for it, so it has that dub quality. It's a pretty big departure from Zelda, and once again, I remember when they were teasing this game, a lot of people were worried. They're like, they're adding voices to Zelda? What? My Zelda on the N64 didn't have any voice acting. We need to address the elephant in the room. This is not the first Zelda game that has fully voice acted cutscenes.
We don't talk
Yeah.
about those.
There's another.
Gee, I sure wish there was something to do. My boy.
Sorry, Link. I don't give credit. God, that guy did such a good performance. Well, the best part about that whole line reading is like he like breaks out of the character like halfway through it. I don't know if he's like doing the deep Moshu voice, and then he like breaks out of it. Like you can hear the real guy behind it at one point. I always found that really funny.
Sorry, it's unrelated to what we're talking about, but I have to know, like, have you guys heard about that new game that came out like a year ago that was like, it was meant to be a modern
Yeah.
they were trying to purposely recreate the CDI style, and they got most of the old voice actors back?
I have it.
Was that called Dustborn? I think
Yes.
that was the
And
the
it's
game that had. Berk
It's
just
actually
missed my
unironically enjoyable.
Berk just missed my stupid joke.
Fuck!
He just powered right through it. Didn't even listen.
I'm so sorry.
A game that had CDI writing quality. Was that Dustborn? I should have said was that Concord? Berk would have got that joke.
Yeah. If it was Concord, I would have been like, fuck.
Concord is easy pickings for jokes. It's not even worth it.
Much like the game itself, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's literally killing the whole team.
Doesn't
Much
exist
like
anymore.
the physical copy of Overwatch for PS4 I have sitting on my shelf. It's worth nothing.
It's worth like less than nothing. You didn't pay somebody to take that silicon off your back.
Some poor child had to make that in a sweatshop.
But the voice acting, it's pretty good. There isn't a lot of it either. It's a select few characters are voiced. I think Zelda, sure, her voice does grow on you. It's when you hear it at first, it's a little interesting. It's like, oh, very posh, very British, very breathy, but she grows on you. And it does make the game feel a little more cinematic, especially considering how story-wise, it's a very like, this thing happened and now you're picking up the pieces type story, which I don't know if, Titus, you mentioned you had plenty of things to say about this game's story.
Story's bad. It's one of the worst.
How dare you?
It's one of the worst stories in Zelda.
How dare you?
I cannot begin to tell you how frustrating it is that we cannot get... look, Zelda already struggles most of the time because Miyamoto has some weird issue with like storytelling and character writing in his games. You know, we insert discussion on modern Paper Mario here, but it becomes like really aggravating in Breath of the Wild when you can't get much of a coherent story because of the nature of it being open world. Like, have to get a really basic, bare bones character interaction and story that plays out pretty much the same regardless of where you go for each of the 4 main areas of the game, because you can't tell that people making the games didn't know which area you were going to visit first, so everything just seems kind of samey and generic. And then all of the meat of the story, like the interesting parts, this you keep hearing, and you see it in the overworld and like visual cues and stuff, this ancient tragedy, this calamity, this apocalyptic event that wiped out, like, I'm assuming most life in Hyrule. You know, peoples were wiped out, villages were destroyed, cities like just completely stricken with malice and hate from Ganon, and just everything's in ruins. Like the champions were who were beloved, the monarchy, which is beloved, all of them wiped out. There's no hope. You think, oh my gosh, this sounds so amazing. I can't wait to see this epic war of against evil unfold before me, so I can see this tragedy take place leading up to where we are now. Best I can do is random cutscenes that are jumbled up in a random order, depending on how you pick them up as you randomly go around the world. That's the best we can do for you, dude.
Titus, you're very opinionated about this. I like this game's story, full disclosure. I need to ask, because the story that you are describing wanting out of a Zelda game, do you want Zelda to just be a like third-person Sony movie game? Because that's kind of the story you're describing.
No.
Like action-packed, a giant war happening. Yeah, but how do you do that for a Zelda game? That's the question. How do you do that? And I think the way they did it is very sensible, in my opinion. It's in the same way that it happens in a lot of other Zelda games. It's this thing has happened off-screen before the player has arrived. And you are now learning of this story after it has already happened, or at least learning the context of the world as it's happened. Because if you were to try and make this, because like, I mean, we talked about Hyrule Warriors, like that takes place during it's happening.
It was great.
But it wasn't a Zelda game.
Yeah, it had Zelda on the cover. You could play as Zelda.
Oh, stop. That's not a Zelda game. It's a hack and slash brawler. I don't think Zelda, I understand, as cool as it sounds, to have like Zelda have like a cinematic Zelda experience, it would just also make it not Zelda. It would just be, I don't know, it would just be a very like kind of dull linear
I mean, I'm
game.
not asking for Horizon Zero hidden bore. I'm just asking for like a straightforward story like in most Zelda games. I couldn't even get that. It's just you got flashbacks and you've got slight variations of the same like story beats 4 times in a row. Have fun. Like, mind you, I thought Tears of the Kingdom was way better. The story was much better. I still wouldn't say it's like a great story. Like it's decent, but at least it's a straightforward story. And they worked around it, so at least, even though they still couldn't tell where you were gonna go first, so they couldn't go necessarily A to B plot thread wise, like they still made them distinct and interesting enough that the stories felt unique and self-contained for each one. They didn't feel as samey as Breath of the Wild. And at least a huge chunk of the game's lore and backstory and stuff wasn't relegated to flashbacks collections. I mean, I know in Tears of the Kingdom, parts of the story you only get from spoiler.
I was gonna say, Tears of the Kingdom had, I don't know why you're dividing the two games. It had like such a similar, almost borderline repeated story premise.
Here's the thing.
And I like both, by the way. I like both stories.
Tears of the Kingdom, Link is experiencing everything himself, and then the parts that you're getting through, like the story, the beats that are similar to like recovering memories. In this case, they're the dragon tears. That makes sense. You're seeing a story play out from somebody, like from a different time through someone else's eyes. Like it's different because it's events Link was never around to view in the first place.
So you don't like the idea that Link has amnesia?
No, I think amnesia is such a stupid, boring plot thread in anything.
Even in Amnesia: The Dark Descent?
I've never played that. I don't really like horror games very much.
I'll give you a hint, Titus. It has amnesia in it. I don't know. I don't mind the way this game sets up its story. I do understand, like, from a standpoint, people are like, oh, you have all these champions and you don't really get to interact with them. That story has already happened. I mean, at that point, you're just complaining with the premise of the game. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
everybody lost 100 years ago. Those champions are long gone. What you're doing now is you're basically trying to restore that. You're trying to bring back new champions. You're trying to rescue the princess who's been in stasis for 100 years. They do kind of gloss over that part, how she's telepathically communicating with you.
The sheer trauma this woman must be going through from constantly being at war with this evil demon pig man for 100 years.
I would have, my only things that I would have wanted from the story, it would have been nice to have some more like character stuff with like either Link interacting with the champions. Because most of the character it's Zelda. It's Zelda's story. Link is really just kind of like, because even then Link, the only reason Link is like 100 years in the future without his memories is because of Zelda, because she rescued him.
That's why Age of Calamity is so good, because you get to see, yes, I know the complaint, spoilers for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity for anyone watching. The game was sold on the premise you're seeing the events of the war take place, and then it turns out, plot twist, the actual story is that it's a split in the timeline where a miniature guardian gets sent back in time from the original timeline by Zelda, gets sent back in time to stop it from happening in the first place. So you're seeing most of the events play out, but you inevitably prevent the worst case scenarios. Like, you prevent the champions from dying, you prevent Link from having to go into stasis, etc., etc., and it ends up creating a split in the timeline with a different ending. But you get to see most of the events, how they actually did play out for the most part, and you actually get pretty good like cutscenes and story moments where you actually get to see the characters interact, you get to see them struggle with the calamity firsthand, and you get to see Zelda's struggle to awaken her powers in the first place firsthand in real time, dynamically, to the point where like there's this big moment where she finally, to prevent the bad timeline from happening and shift it from Link being put into stasis in the original timeline, she manages to unlock her power, and like it completely changes her entire moveset, so she plays like a completely different character all of a sudden. It's so cool. It's such a, like, I like to use this word. I've never gotten to use this word before. Like all the real video essayists do. It's such a good ludo narrative experience.
Berk, what do you think of this game's story?
It's a story. You know, it's bare bone. What can I say that you haven't already stated?
It isn't Wind Waker. You could say that.
Yeah, it isn't Wind Waker, sure. It was nice to actually see you lose. Like at the beginning. It's kind of refreshing to actually be like, yeah, we lost. And you realize that life still moved on. That things kept going, but you try to piece it back together to make it better. And I enjoy it. It definitely wasn't its strongest point. I think that's what they tried to figure out with later. I do really think that the studio was so like, hey, we got to make this thing work on a gameplay level, on making sure everything else is exciting enough. And they did. They did. It was very exciting. It's very fun. But the story is, like the music, a little sparse for my taste.
I agree, but I am someone who I enjoy a game at maybe the gameplay level, a little before story. So to me, having even a story that's even just a little sparse, the story that isn't in the way, I don't mind that in my games. But I recognize that is me. I agree with you, Berk. The game definitely came first, and the story they had to add after. And I think that's why the story is very much the way it is. How do we make an open world story? We make an open world game. We need to have these elements and these elements. How do we make a story fit? And it's the answer they got was, let's have the story happen in the past, and you're learning the story with Link.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's sparse is the word I would use.
Sparse, yeah.
It needs a little more seasoning. It needs a little more meat. But it's not bad. It's not undercooked. It just needs a healthier portion for something that usually prides itself on its lore, especially when we actually get to fight Malice, right? Like the actual fucking thing from Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, by the way, there's this thing here. Just kill it. Have a really cool big boar section and shoot it.
Yeah, it reminds me of like at the end of Wind Waker, you had this actually very compelling human moment from Ganondorf where he ponders his place in existence. You know, in Skyward Sword, I mean, he was always a comical. He's literally just the devil, but for Zelda, But like Demise still has this like epic, villain monologue where like you really get a sense of like how grand of like an evil force he is, like an insurmountable force that Link has to overcome. Like, you get these really cool moments. And then in Breath of the Wild, it's like, it's a giant pig, isn't it?
It shoot lasers. It's just a minor riff because you made such a brilliant first half of a fight that I have my gripe about that fight.
I did like Calamity Ganon. Apparently, story-wise, what's happening is Ganon knows that you've just woken up, and he's quickly trying to assemble a body. That's what's happening. And that's why, once you actually enter the castle, that's his half-assed attempt at making a physical form, is that weird, like, cyborg Calamity Ganon creature. But yeah, I mean, story-wise, like and this might be just the fact that we're overanalyzing it, because we're talking about a story that you get in chunks of little flashbacks, in between giant chunks of you're exploring the game, you're going through dungeons, you're going through shrines, you're fighting dragons and bosses.
You're building the economy to build your town.
And that's really where the story excels. I understand. It's I do kind of get Titus's point of like, it's a story that's kind of already happened, and it's not one that's happening right now. And the story that is happening right now is very light. It's you, or basically it's you finding the new champions and defeating the divine beasts. But yeah, the timeline. Do we want to address the Zelda timeline?
Yes, I very much want to discuss the timeline.
Okay, what do you think? What do you think the timeline is, Titus?
Okay.
What do you think?
So I want you to know, in real life, I have my hands crossed together in front of me, placed on the desk. I am locked in right now. Okay, so I believe officially, as of now, I could be wrong about this, but I believe officially the lore is, as we know, the three timelines, like the split, from Ocarina into three main timelines, and then Breath of the Wild is just vaguely, and Tears of the Kingdom after it are just vaguely separate. They never address where exactly they take place. All that we know is that they happen at some point very, very, very far after every other Zelda game. Which timeline is it in? We don't know. Now, I cannot believe I'm about to say this.
Oh boy.
But the best, and I choose to believe this is a headcanon. I'm not even claiming it's canon, because I don't think it is, unfortunately. But I think it's the only way for people who care about the lore that you could make it make sense. And that is the theory presented, or at least popularized, by a certain Matthew Patrick on Game Theory, which is that Hyrule Warriors is canon. That everything falls into place if you consider the fact that in Breath of the Wild, it has aspects and references to the lore and characters and areas of the worlds of Zelda games from across all three separate timelines, and it happens supposedly later after all those games takes place in at least one of the timelines. It makes sense all of a sudden if you consider the idea that sometime after the events of all those other three timelines, but before Breath of the Wild, the events of the Hyrule Warriors game happens, space and time kind of just fall apart, and everything crosses over with each other a ton, and now suddenly everything, it makes sense. Now Breath of the Wild, sure, we don't know exactly what timeline it takes place in, but whichever of the three timelines it takes place in, the events of Hyrule Warriors cause so much displacement of events and like information of what happened in other timelines that they would have knowledge of all these other things happening in the first place. It's the only way you can make it make any semblance of sense. And then this isn't even taking into account that the second Hyrule Warriors game, Age of Calamity, is technically another timeline split from the original Breath of the Wild. So I'm not even going to get into that. But yeah, I'm not sitting here claiming that that's canon, but I'm saying as someone who cares about lore, if you, like me, really care about the fact that the lore doesn't seem to make much sense with Breath of the Wild, which is clearly just Nintendo not caring, and you want to make it fit, then you can just headcanon that Hyrule Warriors is canon after all, and it takes place in between all the other games and Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. That's the only way to make it make sense. That's my opinion. That's all I gotta say on it.
I've spent years making videos without invoking MatPat, and in the span of 5 minutes, Titus, you've completely ruined that track record for me. I hope you're proud of yourself.
That's just a theory. A game theory.
These are the risks you take when you invite new guests, Andy.
Yeah, this really is. I guess I don't have much to say about the timeline as you did. I was just gonna say, so the timeline, for those who don't know, Titus just went on his rant. There are 3 Zelda timelines. It's all thanks to fucking Ocarina of Time. Because in that universe, Link goes into the future, and because of his deeds in the future, Zelda sends him back to the past. And if I understand correctly, he's sent back before even events in Ocarina of Time, before like he as a kid was able to travel into the future. It basically resets it all the way back. So in that, as Nintendo has clarified, with that event, creates 3 separate timelines. It creates a timeline where Link is still around, but he's not, like, he's just a kid, and he's basically a kid who didn't do anything. To everybody, there's no hero. There was never a need for him because Ganon was taken care of before he became a problem. There's then the future that he left, where there's now no hero in that future, and then there's a third future, which this is definitely Nintendo kind of bullshitting their way through
the leftovers timeline.
There's one where he just loses at some point. He's killed by Ganondorf. And so from there, that's where the timeline split off. It's claimed that the original Zelda games, like the classic 2D ones for NES, and I believe SNES as well, those take place on the doomed timeline where Link was killed. The one where he's sent back in time, obviously that one leads into Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess is very clearly just a sequel to Ocarina of Time. We know this. And then Wind Waker is apparently set in the hero-less timeline, where there was no hero and Hyrule flooded.
Yeah.
And then I believe Skyward Sword is the origin of all of that. And then I think there's even a few games pre-Ocarina of Time after Skyward Sword.
Right.
And so Breath of the Wild takes place God knows how long after all these timelines. Because at this point, Nintendo, like, we understand. They've made this timeline, and they just want a game that has an easy-to-follow story. They don't want to have people trying to figure out, well, where in the timeline does this take place? It's like interacting with Star Wars fans. I get it. I get the frustration. I get, hey, this is a new era. This is so far in the future, it doesn't even matter what timeline it's in. All the timelines have merged. What does that mean? I have no idea. What does it mean for a timeline to merge with another? Who knows?
It doesn't happen. That's something that doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing. It's not a thing. And your stupid MatPat theory, I hate how that actually does make sense.
Well,
I'm not going to dwell on
I
it
know
any
it's
longer.
it's funny to meme on MatPat. I'm not exactly like, I mean, I don't hate the guy or anything, but I'm not exactly a fan of him either. But like, objectively, it makes sense.
What if Luigi did die of COVID?
Shut up. Shut up, man. He'd take a 1-up and then he'd come back.
What I was getting at, though, is more the setting that this game takes place in. Because we know that this is set like... And I guess Tears of the Kingdom basically implies that this is like thousands, maybe even like... I wouldn't say millions of years, because that's insane, but definitely thousands of years beyond beyond the other Zelda games. And my theory has always been... And it was mostly the case with Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom did kind of fuck it up with the timeline. Was that this is the post-apocalyptic Zelda. I get Breath of the Wild is already post-apocalyptic. That's kind of that's the whole point of the game. That's the whole aesthetic. But even like before the initial calamity, this is a post-technological world that the characters are inhabiting. Because think about it. You have a medieval society. They're basically medieval, technology-wise. If we're playing Civ on the tech tree, they've just entered their medieval era.
I mean, Spirit Tracks has trains.
Spirit Tracks does have trains. You're right. Thanks for ruining my theory, Titus.
Also, some of the older NES, SNES, Game Boy era games have telephones.
Aside from little bits and pieces of technology, it is a very, very classical, restricted medieval society.
I'm sorry.
So what my theory has always been, this Sheikah technology that we have, these divine beasts, like all of a sudden they have like mechs. They have giant mechanical robots. And even like flashing forward to Tears of the Kingdom. Like the Zonai, they have robots. They have robot servants. They have all this technology. And yet it's still in like a medieval context. My theory has always been that these games take place after some huge technological revolution. And this is like the aftermath of it. This is the Hyrule that exists long after all these technological powers existed. Technological powers that maybe were led up to from the Zelda games prior. So it's thousands of years. That's enough time for society to fully develop into something more technologically advanced. But now something may have happened. Now we're in the post-apocalyptic version of that. Now we're at the point where all that technology it's remnants of an old age, and technology that we barely even know how to use anymore. Like we've like a Sheikah slate. That's like an iPad. You're wandering around in a like medieval kingdom and you're holding an iPad. Basically, this is a post-apocalyptic world. The Sheikah are the ones who hold on to this remnant technology. Very similar to a game called Strife. It's very similar. I'm basically trying to imply that this is a medieval society that still has robots and mechs. Not because they selectively invented these things, but because they're carryovers from a long-lost civilization from thousands of years ago. So that's all I'm getting at.
I mean, I can accept the fact that everything is always Middle Ages type technology with some exceptions, considering the fact that the literal lore of the series is that the devil of this universe basically is going to has cursed the world to constantly like come back over and over and over again every few hundred years, and then he just destroys everything so badly that they just have to reset over and over and over again. Like I can accept that. Can I share a bit? Like you can feel free to cut this for the video if you want, but I just want to share this real quick story about the timeline. Is it okay if I
go
share
ahead.
this?
Go talk about the timeline some more.
Okay, so
I'm sure Berk's enjoying this conversation.
I'm sorry, Berk.
It's okay. I've been casually just reading up on the other goofy shit you could do in fucking Breath of the Wild, such as riding deer.
That's true. You can, and you could ride a bear.
And you can do that in real life too, but
once.
That's up to you.
You can do that once.
If you bribe the bear with cigarettes, the Russians proved that to me.
I love that video. It's like an Only Plays moment. I love that video of the guy who goes up to the bear and he's like trying to harass it, and the bear fucking mauls him. It's like, what did you think you were doing, dude? Anyway, continue. Sorry for interrupting you,
Yeah,
Titus.
no,
You can
you're
continue.
fine. It's my fault for always having tangents. Anyway, I'll keep it short. I've told you this. I've mentioned it to you two before, I think, but I do tabletop games. I DM or GM, whatever you want to call it, tabletop games. And I've run a few Pokemon ones in the past. I'm currently doing a Digimon one. Anyway, I only bring it up because instead of doing the Digimon one, originally I was going to do a Legend of Zelda tabletop campaign. And I spent a long time working out all the rules of this module I found. I built the world and the story and all that. And I was like, I should wait for that new Tears of the Kingdom game first and play it just to make sure my intended story doesn't clash with whatever lore changes they make with Tears of the Kingdom. Like Breath of the Wild was already crazy and doesn't make a lot of sense, so I should make sure. And then all of that stuff with the ancient Zonai and the goat people, like all that happened and like just made a mess of the lore. And I was just like I looked like Pim at the end of the pilot episode of Smiling Friends. Like I was so distraught with like how the lore of Zelda is just absolute trash fire. I basically threw all my work in the garbage and said, screw it, I'm not doing a Zelda game. I'm not dealing with this. As someone obsessed with like, I have to make this make sense with the lore. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Tears of the Kingdom ruined a campaign from ever happening. Just because of some stupid goat people.
We got a pretty good video game out of it, though.
No, it was a pretty good video game. It's fine. It's fine. Now I'm just doing something else. It's fine. Yeah, how do you feel about the goat people? The Zonai, I think is what they're called, right? How do you feel about them?
The goat, like camel people.
Yeah, the alpaca people.
I don't know. They're goats and they have robots. That's definitely where Tears of the Kingdom was retreading a lot of Breath of the Wild. It's like it's not Sheikah tech, it is Zonai tech. And it's like, okay, what are we doing?
That's what got is that they're just like, where'd the divine beasts and the shrines go? They didn't need them anymore, so they're just gone.
Although I like how Link's Resurrection Shrine is still exists and is being co-opted by the Yiga clan. Tears of the Kingdom in general, it would have been a good expansion. It was clearly an expansion that they turned into a full game. That's clearly what happened. I mean, it was fine. It was nice seeing all the champions kind of like grown to their role. Like it was nice seeing like Riju and Tulin. It's like, oh, these are like actual warriors now. I like that.
Riju's a badass.
I like I do like Riju. I felt they improved upon a lot of the shrines. The puzzles were a lot better. Crafting was a lot cooler. I liked that they got rid of all like the kind of unique, and maybe some people would dislike this. They got rid of some of the more unique weapons, and instead they created a like weapon tree, like weapon tech tree, where hey, you don't have a specific wand that will shoot fire. Instead, you have to attach like a ruby to some sort of stick, and now all of a sudden you have a fire-based weapon. So that's what some enemies carry now. I thought that was a cool kind of change of pace. It was nice being able to craft your own weapons, because that was the thing with Breath of the Wild is all of those like materials that you got from enemies, all you really could use those for was for upgrading armor
Or cooking.
Tears of the Kingdom at least like gave you the option to start using these as like weapons. Like I love with the Gibdos, I love how you could just attach their bones to an arrow and all of a sudden you have like a super powerful arrow. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting departure for Zelda with the Gary's Mod building. I don't know if I would say it's worth $70. I think this would have been a fine expansion, not a $70 game. It's hard because I got this as a gift, so it's hard for me to like evaluate it.
I like the part where they realized the original champion replacement for the Rito tribe was so boring they replaced it with his son, voiced by Christina V. That was very funny to me.
I did notice that. I noticed that.
Which, no hate, his character was fun, and Christina V's a great voice actress. It's just, I just thought it was noticeably funny that they were just like, yeah, this character, he's so boring, even Yonobu is better, just get rid of him.
I like the Sky Islands, those were fun.
Oh yeah, the big cube golems. I like those guys.
God, yeah, being able to like break them apart. Like there was good stuff there. I enjoyed, I beat it. I thoroughly enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know if it's worth $70 though. I don't necessarily think that. And now the real question is, where does Zelda go from here?
With that one Zelda game.
Echoes of Wisdom.
I mean, I'm not a fan of the art style, but like I think it's interesting.
Because what's happening here is this might end up getting the Metroid treatment that Metroid got, where you have a big budget series and then you kind of have a smaller 2D series. We're definitely gonna get more 2D Zelda games. And I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of the art style. I wish they would switch to, honestly, like if they went back to like pixel graphics, like I'd be totally down for that. It took them like 7 years for them to make Tears of the Kingdom. 6 years to make Tears of the Kingdom. What are we gonna get? Is it genuinely gonna take like 7 or 8 years till we get the next 3D Zelda game? Is this really the path that Nintendo's going?
Let me posit this question to you, Andy. What do you specifically want from the next big Zelda game?
I want them to try something different. As much as I like Breath of the Wild, I don't know if I want more of the same.
You don't want nuts and bolts too?
Because I think all people really wanted from Breath of the Wild sequel is just a new map to explore. And I think people think that if we have the exact same gameplay but set in a brand new map, it's gonna be Breath of the Wild all over again. I don't necessarily believe that. I think a lot of what made Breath of the Wild unique was finding out those mechanics along with exploring. It wasn't just the fact that you were uncovering parts of the map and you were finding dungeons and shrines. It was also the fact that at the same time you realized you could craft this particular type of potion with these materials that you had, or that you could kill an enemy really fast by using this particular moveset. I think there's not a lot of places Zelda can go if they stick with this Breath of the Wild formula. I'm excited to see what they do, but as I said, we're probably not going to get, if the time it takes to make a new Zelda is the same as it took to make Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, we're not going to see a new Zelda game till 2030. Like, that's absurd.
There's no way we don't get a new Zelda game in the first year or two of the Switch 2.
It's going to be a 2D game. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm fine with that.
Which, yeah, I wouldn't, again, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but I don't know. Breath of the Wild, I honestly, I think this is going to be their kind of new Ocarina of Time. You had Ocarina, you had the defining system seller, you had the game that shocked people with how, like, big and open it was. It shocked people to think what you could really do with a video game. And then you had the sequel, which some people liked, some people didn't like, and it reused all the same assets and was more of just kind of like an asset flip. Told a new story, did some new stuff, and some people still complained about it. And then you're going to have the game that does a departure from that. You're going to have your Wind Waker, and people are going to get mad that it's not Ocarina of Time again. So then you're going to have your rebound, which is going to be Twilight Princess. And then people are going to realize that Wind Waker was actually better than Twilight Princess. I say. and then we're going to get stuck with Skyward Sword. So that's where we're going. We're repeating, much like the Zelda timeline, we're repeating history.
What you're saying is that Echoes of Wisdom is the Wind Waker.
I'm referring to the 3D games. The 2D games are their own little,
okay,
little
fair enough.
series.
Yeah, but say the 2D games have their own ecosystem. They're generally pretty good. The worst offenders are still like, it's not that bad.
Look, all I'm saying is if we're up for the Wind Waker equivalent next, then that means we're going to be eating good whenever the next one comes out, so I'm ready.
And then they made Twilight Princess, which, I'm sorry, there's parts of that game that I think look really stunning. It genuinely is one of the ugliest Zelda games I think they've ever made. It's so
the blue filter,
brown
I will
and
give you credit,
blue.
is a little egregious.
But we got Midna. We got Midna from that game.
I feel like I have malaria whenever I see a screenshot of that game.
That's
Hey.
okay.
No. I get what he's talking about with specifically the filter, the way it makes it look. I get it. However, everyone's nostalgic for their old timey games.
That's true. That is true.
Burke, what would you want from a new Zelda?
That's a tough question. To be honest, it would be nice to see a proper... It goes back to Dragon Quest for me, honestly.
Heck yeah.
That, or, I like what Echoes did. It tried to fucking actually take a step away from playing Link. Because at a certain point, I do feel like Breath of the Wild was the breath of fresh air. There's my pun for today. But where the fuck do you go from it?
And that's the question that Nintendo is having right now.
Like, I can't think of anything outside of... There's a mod that I played, a couple mods for the Ocarina of Time recently. Have you seen, like, Indigo? It's like, like a mild horror mod. It's pretty spooky.
So you're thinking Zelda horror game.
But there's other ones that make, like, roguelike combat out of it, too. And I enjoyed those very deeply.
But I don't know if I'd want that from a Zelda game.
That's what I'm saying, is, like, the things that I enjoy now would be more of B-track projects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I know what I would want from a new Zelda, and I think they can get it by copying Mario. Okay, so hear me out. Everything you're saying now about Breath of the Wild, like, where does Zelda go from here after such a grandiose game? That's what everyone said after Mario Galaxy.
So Zelda Galaxy 2.
Yeah. And then we got Mario Odyssey, which objectively is lower stakes. It's like a world-trotting adventure when you previously traversed outer space. But it felt so much bigger and, to a lot of people, is an even better game than Galaxy. I propose the following. The next Zelda game should take place, for the first time since maybe the Game Boy era, in a place outside of Hyrule. Like, we know
Majora's Mask was out of Hyrule.
Like,
I agree as well.
We know next to nothing about the world of Zelda. Like, and then whenever we do leave Hyrule, it's almost always just an alternate timeline, or an alternate dimension, or a mirror world, or a dark world.
Or a dream. Don't forget the dream.
Or some kind of like an afterlife or plane of existence. You know what I'm saying. But like, think about it. Like, Link is this epic character who's done crazy things, but it's all been confined for the most part to variations of this one specific fantasy nation. Different incarnations of it, sure, sometimes in a parallel dimension or whatever, but relatively the same. Now, what the heck could the rest of this crazy fantasy world look like? And, like, how would Link adapt to that? I mean, we know that Demise technically is behind every single Zelda villain in some form or another. So there's no reason we can't get unique, new kinds of villains that take different forms and have different, modus operandi that are still grand and evil in different parts of the Zelda world in brand new settings with new races we've never seen before. There's so much room to grow. There's so many places they could take it. I really think that the best thing for The Legend of Zelda is to take Link and Zelda and push them out of Hyrule.
I do agree. I agree that would probably be for the best, and I would even go so far as to say I would say that's probably what Nintendo is planning on doing. I've one big theory as to what I think the next 3D Zelda game is probably going to be. I agree they're probably going to scale it down, like in terms of like size and scope, or like just like stakes, I should say. Very similar to Mario Odyssey to Mario Galaxy. I would go so far as to make a prediction. I think, because think about what we've had so far. We had Breath of the Wild. You have Hyrule. We got Tears of the Kingdom. Bunch of Sky Islands. Very, very reminiscent of Skyward Sword. At the very least, aesthetically. It did feel... When we first saw that trailer, it was like, oh, that's why they brought Skyward Sword to Switch. I see.
Yeah, I was excited. I thought it was going to be like tied to the lore, and then it wasn't. Sorry.
I think the next Zelda game is going to be Wind Waker. And I know I joked earlier about they're gonna have a Wind Waker. I think it's gonna be more like, I think it's gonna be island hopping. I think that's what the next Zelda game is going to be. Because I can picture that trailer. You can picture it. It's like Link, maybe Zelda's tagging along. I don't know if they're going to stay with this timeline. I would imagine Nintendo probably want to stick with this timeline. They spent a lot of time deleting the other ones. I don't think they want to immediately jump ship from this one. But I think it's definitely probably going to be set in a far off place, a new location. If I were to guess, I think that would be the gimmick, is they're going to bring back boats from Wind Waker. That's just a weird theory that I have. Might not even be the case. It probably won't be. Let's be real. We all saw how Skull and Bones did.
I think you have a point. A lot of games have been either they have or now they are trying to do the Assassin's Creed 4 deal. Even Yakuza now is trying to do a pirate game.
Yeah, I mean, Yakuza has a pirate game,
which I'm excited for. I am excited for. I still got to play through 4 through, what is it, like 8? I got to play through 4 through 8 first. But I mean, it looks cool. But yeah, no, I could see that happening. It would definitely be a good way to keep things mixed up, you know? A lot of new locales.
Because think about it. Tears of the Kingdom established that their engine can now have you riding on vehicles and controlling vehicles and adding stuff to a vehicle.
Mad Max.
Oh God,
that would be so cool. A Mad Max Zelda.
I hope it doesn't take. I hope it's not the 2030s by the time we see our next 3D Zelda game. It probably will be.
We'll all meet back up?
I just had a time warp. I just saw what happened in the future. I saw one of those like shitty YouTube retrospectives on Nintendo in the 2020s. The Switch 2 is gonna be a moderate but fledgling success. It's gonna be a very like weak success, barely churning out a profit, and people are gonna say, oh, the reason it didn't is because there was no 3D Zelda game. Very much like the Wii U. I just saw that annoying YouTube video. I saw that Scott the Woz video in my brain. I
like Scott the Woz.
The reason the Switch 2 didn't really sell that well is there was no Zelda game. Zelda 2035 only came out 10 years later. Who knows? Who knows what we don't know. But I'll be honest, I don't think Nintendo knows.
I mean, they're probably working on it as we speak.
I would be shocked if they have settled on what they're prototyping. I'd be shocked if they figured out exactly what they're going to make.
Zelda the musical.
I actually do hope music's a part of the next game. I hope there's instruments in the next Zelda.
That's something I do miss from a lot of the other series. As goofy as the fucking wolf one was for Twilight Princess, even I'm like, this is fucking annoying. Because I don't want to hear but you know, I do miss the instruments. Even the conductor wand was kind of cool as fuck.
No, that wand was trash, dude. I'll take the wolf howls over the wand any day,
What the
man.
fuck, Titus? Do you want to hear?
I like dogs. Yeah, why not?
No.
I thought it was funny.
I'm predicting no Zelda. Because think about Breath of the Wild. And this was like 10 years ago. Breath of the Wild was originally going to be a Wii U game. And so they were teasing that game way before we even knew. We knew what Breath of the Wild was before we knew what the Switch was. Remember that. We're not getting a Zelda launch title. I'd be shocked if we get a 3D Zelda game on the scale of Breath of the Wild on the Switch 2 in its lifespan. Unless its lifespan is incredibly long, which Nintendo might try and do, I think it's going to be a long time before we get a new 3D Zelda game. Which, hey, we have Breath of the Wild. We also have Tears of the Kingdom. I enjoy Breath of the Wild for what it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful game, and it's something that not a lot of games can replicate. I don't even know if Nintendo would be able to replicate. It was lightning in a bottle.
I agree with that. It's that era.
It is a once-in-a-generation type of game.
Correct. And I think that's where Nintendo is afraid of what they're going to do next, because they know. I assume they know that there's not a lot of places they can go to after this, because the expectations are going to be insane. So maybe they scale things down. Maybe that is what they do. Maybe they go back to like smaller scale Zelda games set in 3D. Maybe we get a Zelda Battle Royale.
Maybe we get a futuristic Zelda game, and then at the end it turns out it was actually a Xenoblade game the whole time.
They're going to reveal that this was Earth the whole time.
Bom, 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 bom.
I mean, in the original few games, wasn't Zelda like the lore was originally? It was just like a fantasy medieval Earth.
It was they had
Christianity was a thing.
Yeah, they had like them praying to crosses. Yeah, maybe that's an angle. They could kind of go back to the older Zelda games, like
I don't know if they could do that without
pre-SNES
upsetting people.
Zelda.
Do it anyway.
Like that aesthetic. They kind of already are doing. They're trying to do that at least with like Echoes of Wisdom, those 2D games. Who knows where those are? You know what? I'm done talking about the timeline. Who cares about the timeline?
I do. I care about the timeline. Me.
But yeah, that's where I stand with Zelda. I'll try and get around to playing those older Zelda games, and then maybe we can come back here, sit down, and have a chat about some of them. At least Ocarina of Time.
Andy, before we end, I do have to know, who is best girl from Breath of the Wild?
That's a very good question. I know I would be a basic bitch in saying Zelda. I understand.
I like the snowboarding cabin lady.
That was pretty good. I liked her.
That's a powerful take. I respect that.
Yeah, I think I'll maybe Mipha. I liked her. Mipha.
I was gonna say if no one says Mipha, people are gonna be mad in the comments, bro.
But that'd be very fitting though if no one said Mipha, because that fits her character.
Dunked so hard.
Does she though? I thought her whole thing was that she was.
Her whole thing was that she was Miss Third Wheel. That's
no. Her whole thing was she was engaged. No, her whole thing was she was engaged to Link. She literally gave him armor that canonically her species only betroths to the people they're getting married
but it's
to.
Unrequited. It's never fully received, right?
Really?
It's supposed to be tragic.
The way I always read it was that him and Mipha were a thing, and that's why it's so tragic, is that she died. Link was engaged to her, and then she died.
I like how we're bringing this up right as we're ending the video, too. I enjoy it.
Anyway, best girl is...
discussion.
Anyway, best girl is Urbosa. That's my take.
You can pick any of them. They're all pretty good.
Do you have anything else to say about Zelda?
It's a fucking good game.
It is a
minor
good game.
nitpicks.
Very good game.
I mean, it's aight. It's like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10.
Oh, we've gone up to an 8. That's pretty good.
I'm about to say
bad.
That's pretty nice.
You were saying it was like mid. You're calling it mid of the wild.
Well, yeah, but the meme nowadays the kids use is you gotta say mid to refer to anything that isn't like gonna make you like scream in excitement and joy. Like, yeah, Breath of the Wild is objectively a good game with a lot of high points. I just, don't view it as highly as a lot of other Zelda games.
One last point. Koroks.
I love the Koroks. I love them so much. I want a little plush of a Korok.
See, I was a Crusader, so this is a problem. I fucking hated them so goddamn much. Oh, I'm gonna climb to the top of Ganon's castle. This will be pretty cool. Get the fuck out of here. I'm enjoying this view. Sorry, that's probably an extreme
I like
tangent.
getting to launch them around in Tears of the Kingdom.
That was pretty good.
That's why I say I'm a Crusader.
That was great.
I was nice to them. I like the little Korok guys. They're my friends.
I would strap them to a rocket and just see how far they could go before they unrender it out of the game.
So all I'm saying is if I knew a Korok in real life, I'd fight to the death to protect that little
I'd bully
dude.
him. No. They're giving you shit, Titus. That's literally what they're giving you. They're shit. That's what they think of you. They think of you as worthy of shit.
I mean, I don't know, man. That's like their custom, right? You know, I don't know if that's really my place to question.
So, could the whole story of Breath of the Wild have just been prevented if they just turned off the divine beasts? Would that have just
Yes.
saved everything?
It's literally
It's hey, those
look-
giant scary robot monsters. What if we just turned those off?
hey, this
Did they
ancient
ever? By the way, did they ever address what happened? I know I played all the way through Tears of the Kingdom. Did they ever address what happened? In
Well, I literally said that earlier. Is that like
They
they
just, like,
literally
disappeared,
just
right?
say, "Oh, we didn't need them anymore. They're gone." Like they don't. Did they break them down for parts to make other stuff? Did they
I would
just
hope so.
move them out of the country? Did they?
It
are
makes
they
sense
just,
that they had. It does make sense that immediately they're like, okay, let's get rid of these things.
Yeah, did they just?
That makes sense.
Did they just re-hide them? Like sure.
They reburied
why not?
them.
The answer is Nintendo was lazy and didn't want to have to deal with answering the question of what do we do
How-
with these things.
How dare you? Nintendo's never lazy. Did you see what they did with all that cardboard? Those were the dark times. Those were
I mean, look, I'm
That-
sure plenty of kids had fun with those. You know,
whatever happened to all that cardboard?
sitting in someone's closet somewhere. Scott the Waz owns
Oh.
90% of them. He
And then there's
hoards
the
them like he hoards hundreds of copies of Fling Smash for the Wii. Shout out to Scott the Waz, by the way.
Isn't it wild we're out of breath talking about this?
That's good enough. That's what you deserve, viewer. You deserve that. I'll just throw this at you. You fucking animals. That's all you are, you viewers.